Greetings, wrestling fans, and welcome to Fannin's Flashbacks, the podcast that nobody asked for, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. This podcast is going to cover tales from IWA Mid-South during my 12 years with the company, and it will be a part of the VNMVS Podcast Network. This podcast is intended for mature audiences only due to the foul language and graphic details about deathmatch wrestling that it will contain. This will be your backstage pass to get a peek behind the curtain at what led to the downfall of the craziest independent wrestling promotion of the late 1990s, early 2000s. And without any further ado, Nick Maniwa, hit the music. Greetings, wrestling fans, and welcome to episode 28 of Fannin's Flashbacks. It's the podcast that nobody asked for, but I decided to give it to you anyway. These are tales from IWA Mid-South during my time there from 1997 to 2009. But this episode's going to be a little bit different than normal, as I am joined today by Brian Vinson. Brian was a fan at IWA shows even before I was. He was the leader of the backyard wrestling crew, the Locke family, and pretty much that entire crew ended up getting involved in IWA as wrestlers, referees, commentators, ring announcers, etc. Brian was around long after I left IWA and was on commentary with Nick Maniwa for hundreds of matches. So we are going to talk before, during, and after my time in IWA. This one's going to cover the entire life of IWA. I'm honored to have such a prolific IWA historian joining me today, and he's going to be able to correct some of the things that I've said on past episodes that he has more information on, or the correct information on. So this is going to end up being an amazing episode, ladies and gentlemen. Brian, how are you doing today?
Thank you for bringing me around, man. Like I said, I feel honored to be asked to be put on this podcast. I never officially wrestled a wrestling match for IWA Mid-South. I worked security for them. I did commentary, all kinds of other things. Jumped in the ring, got beat up a couple times, things like that. But I never really wrestled a match for them. So I wanted to get that out of the way. I'm not trying to say something I'm not. I'm always been more of a fan, I think most of us start out being fans, but that's just me.
Right. Well, and that's generally how we start off each podcast. So why don't you tell everybody just how you became a wrestling fan in the first place?
I had an uncle who was actually he wrestled state, and I remember going to see him when I was 6 years old, and he ended up him and his buddies had, I'm talking early 70s, mid 70s to the late 70s. They had their own front wrestling yard crew. They would go out there and tag each other and use the chain link fence as a top rope, and crazy stuff for the day. And he was in a terrible accident, and he got paralyzed from the neck down when he was 17 years old. And that was my uncle. He passed away like 2 years ago, but he loved wrestling. Even after that, he didn't care. He still watched it all the time. They had cable, we didn't. So, that was my grandma's house also. So, because he was just a teenager when he got paralyzed. So I always I wanted to be able to go make something of myself and stand somewhere and be like, "This is for you, Uncle Danny. This is for you, man." But yeah, he was the one who got me on the Green Bay Packers and Terry Funk. He liked both those. Those were two things he loved, So him and my father were, my father was a boxing guy, but yeah, those were the two main reasons I got into pro wrestling, I'd say, because I remember being 5 years old, sitting crisscross applesauce on my grandma's floor watching WCW. Back then it was TBS, Saturday Night Main Event.
Right.
605.
Right. That's what made me, was that 605 Saturday night. Well, for me, it was 505 being in Chicago. But yeah, that was interesting. Now, your uncle was the accident that paralyzed him. Was that from doing the front yard wrestling?
He tried to do. He tried to give. They would see people run the ropes and then come off and do backdrops, and they got to where they could actually do them pretty good in the front yard. But he tried to buy drop my older cousin, who was probably about 70 pounds heavier than he was. And when he did, he came down on his neck the wrong way, and that was all she wrote. And I
Mm.
just remember my mom answering the phone and being like, I don't know, but Danny's hurt real bad, and he was wrestling and he got hurt real bad. And so it was a negative around my house from then on. When I was a kid and a teenager, man, my dad saw me wrestling with somebody, it was on. He'd be like, "Your uncle got hurt. You should know better." I mean, so
Right.
I didn't get to do that kind of thing, man. And so when we started up the backyards in '95, we started it in our area, and there's so many. We'll get into all that, but yeah,
Yeah.
we started doing that, man. It was a kind of a weird thing because there was a guy that Victor Quiones new name Chad something or other. I don't know his last name. He ran a show circa probably 97 at some crappy bingo hall over in Indiana. And it was a one-shot show, and Manslaughter showed up. I know you're familiar with Manslaughter.
Oh
He
yeah.
he showed up to wrestle New Jack. And so it was supposed to be him against New Jack, and Joe Bailey showed up and was like, "Jack, I can't let put you over on my champ now. This is my BBW champ." He goes, "I wrestle in the ECW arena, man." And he goes, "What is he, your camcorder champ? Do you have TV?" I mean, it was awful. And so Vic the Bruiser was there, and New Jack looked over and goes, "Hey, Vic, me and you tonight, all right?" And he's like, "Okay." He looked over at the Booker Chad dude and goes, "Me and you?" And he's like, "Yeah." And the only reason we knew this Chad guy was because he had worked with Nathan Future's mom. And so
Okay.
he came over and was wrestling around the trampoline with us. And this was probably a year before we ever met Ian or anything else. It was just like a prelude thing.
Okay. All right.
Yep. So
Yeah. So.
we walked out of the me and a couple friends walked out of the Louisville Gardens one night, upset because the biggest move on the whole card was a Hurricane Rana from Wolfie D to Brian Christopher. That was the biggest wrestling move. Everything else was mostly punches.
Well,
The ho-
that was the Memphis staple. The
oh yeah,
punch, the the fake chain, foreign
oh
object
yeah.
in the hand with the punch, and then especially that time frame, and you'd have five matches and four of them would end in a schoolboy, and
Oh yeah.
it had really started to go downhill there, where
Yeah,
it
there
was
was
just
probably
going through the motions and stuff.
I
But I
think
want to I want to circle back just real quick with
okay.
your uncle, just since it's got some parallels then to my story and upbringing, since my
Yeah,
dad was paralyzed from the waist down, not the neck
yeah,
down, but the waist down and
yeah.
stuff. So, it's things I'm finding out about you, and we would have had that little bit in common, and I can definitely understand the whole, you know, hey, your uncle got hurt doing that. Don't be doing that. What are you crazy kind of
Oh
deal?
yeah.
Because I was named after my dad's brother, and I've talked about on the podcast before with, my dad being hemophiliac and ending up in the wheelchair and being paralyzed from the waist down when I was 4 years old. That
Yeah.
happened to him, and then you know the uncle that I'm named after died in a car wreck when he was 16, and he was
Oh
also a hemophiliac. So my grandma just like hawked over me, it was like, you
yeah.
know, don't you be doing this, don't you be doing that, you take it, and it was, all like, I can't lose you too, and don't do this,
Hmm.
don't do that. And so it's just interesting that we have that little bit in common there. Never knew it until just now. um
Oh yeah. I don't tell
you're
very many people about my uncle just because I had a couple people be like, wouldn't that'd make me go the other way and run away. I was like, man, wrestlers are my superheroes, man.
Yeah.
They
And
were my
your
superheroes.
uncle sounds like a great guy, except for that Packers thing. I'm sitting here in my Bears t-shirt.
I said
That
I
that
had to
that
put I had to
Packers
put
that
the Packers
Packers
out there.
thing horrible,
Uh,
but loving Terry Funk and getting you into wrestling, that's
oh yeah.
that's all good right there. But he had Got to tell you, he had poor taste in football teams. Just poor
he,
taste in
he
football
he
teams.
he would talk about the frozen tundra of
Oh,
Lambeau Field. I'd have to hear about that, but yeah, he was a good he spent over 50 something years of his life in the wheelchair, and I never and nobody else that I know that knows of him ever heard him complain about it. Ever heard him complain, ever heard him be down and out and like depressed about it. He always was trying to make people laugh. He always he 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 took that to like, okay, well, this is the way my life is now. I'm going to make the best of it still. And then once he got the electric wheelchair, he used to crack me up because he would take off, and my other uncle would be like, "You better slow down, you're going to wreck." Because he
yeah.
had
The
two brothers that looked out for him, after he got hurt.
Okay. So now, like, what year would would that have been around where he had his accident?
He had his accident probably around 1976, 77. Because I was
Okay.
just a kid. I was only maybe 6 years old, 5 years old. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, as my dad's was 1980, so both of them well before the American with Disabilities Act in 1990. So what
Yeah.
and
And
I can
before,
just I can just imagine down in Kentucky it had to have been the same as it was in Morris where my dad couldn't go anywhere. He couldn't go
no.
out. The stores weren't built for,
Mm-mm.
wheelchairs.
Oh,
Sidewalks weren't built for, you'd have the high curbs. They wouldn't have the
oh,
little
yeah.
ramps so you could get up. And so, yeah, I mean, he was pretty much a prisoner of the house,
Yep, that and if he had two brothers that were a little bit older than him that always stayed. They actually stayed around and helped take care of my grandmother, and then they also helped take care of him after he got hurt and everything, up until the day he passed away. They all stayed. They didn't get married and leave whatever. They stayed by their brother, and that's something I don't want to say commended them on, because to them it was that's what you did.
right.
But I know plenty of people. I have people in my own family that they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't give up their life and having, a wife and kids or whatever. You know what I'm saying? They wouldn't give that up to help take care of their brother who had an accident wheelchair. I know plenty of people that are like that. So
Yeah.
it was a good thing. Um, we walked out of the Louisville Gardens one night and they handed us flyers for IWA Mid South, and it was for the second show.
Second show. Okay.
Was supposed to have Sabu there.
Common
And
theme of
yeah,
supposed to, yeah,
yeah,
with that.
supposed to have Sabu there. And the best part about the that I remember was the night that it was supposed to happen, that next Thursday. See, we got the thing on Tuesday. This was 2 days away. And my friends, they're already scheduled to work. They had to go to a job, the second shift job or whatever. So I ended up going to that show solo all by myself.
Okay.
I see an American kickboxer and what was his name then? Not Parvo.
Pero.
Perro.
El
El
Pero.
Perro. Tarek the Great. El Perro, the dog. Man, that's the match where a kickboxer jumped inside out from the ladder, inside the ring, outside the ring, and they did the Hurricane Run on the floor. I had never seen anything like that live. Never seen anything like that live. It's the
Well,
first time
probably hadn't seen it too many times on tape either.
no, I not at that time and age. I mean, this was, I want to say, I have to say it's between October and probably into November of '96, if I had to guess. I don't know for sure, but yeah. So I told all my friends because we were the crew that would cruise Preston Highway and then make sure at 2 o'clock in the morning we was back at Future's house so that we could watch ECW. You know.
Okay.
So when we heard Sabu's going to be there and we see these things, we had seen some eliminaires matches, things like that, but we were just never seen something like that live, and we all had all grown up, sorry, watching Jerry the King Lawler, watching the Memphis stuff.
Right.
So we get the best of both worlds when we show up at the old Kmart building.
Okay. So it was the second building at the Kmart building, not the second show like at the random armories
Yeah, no,
before you
no, not the New
started. So
Albany. Yeah. This
okay.
I think this was the second time they did. This was the second time they did do the. I remember that somebody said that they had a truck stop somewhere in Kentucky, like the year before Pondo and Ian had done the Four Corners of Pain,
Okay,
and
well,
this
it
was
wasn't Kentucky. I think that was out somewhere out on the East Coast because I remember that
oh, it
being in one
was
of yeah, yeah, it was like
yeah.
out in Jersey or Pennsylvania, somewhere out east because I think that was a Coralooza show where
Ah,
they
okay.
did that and it actually made it into like one of the after magazines and I could remember like seeing that in one of the magazines and it like blowing my mind being like whoa this is something that happens and at that point I hadn't really found ECW
Oh,
when
okay.
when that match had happened. I don't think I'd found ECW yet, or I might have just found it because I think when did I find it was I think it was early 96. I think that I had found ECW on my satellite dish.
Yeah,
Um maybe 95. It
yeah.
might have been 95. Well, I think yeah, 95 because that would have been the summer I came. It was the summer I came back from my freshman year of college. So I started, yeah, that would have been, it would have been 95. So summer of 95 was when I discovered ECW. And that was probably around, maybe shortly after that was when I saw the article in the magazine and was just like, oh, there's other shows that do this too. It's not just the ECW. And
Oh, yeah. That's the way we was too. We would come home on Friday nights from hanging out, cruising, pressing, because we were what are you were you 54, 55? And so some of the guys that we hung out with, like Future and them, they're 7, 8 years younger than me. They was just getting out of high. They was still in high school at the time. And so we would go cruise press and hang out with girls, whatever. But we made sure we was home by 2 a.m. because 2 a.m. on the same um, public access channel here in Louisville, that was the same access channel that we were on. That's what ECW came on. It came on 2 a.m. on Friday nights. So we made sure we got there by 2 a.m. and we sitting. It was always like 2 or 3 weeks behind, and every now and then you get the same episode for 2 or 3 weeks straight, and we'd be mad. Be like, how many weeks in a row are they going to show this one? But and we found out Ian Rotten was the one running Louisville Gardens. I remember I was like, he won the feud of the year last year in PWI. The Mark magazines. We
right.
was all about the Mark magazines. The top 500 every year was such a big deal. And that was that. You found it weird for somebody who's in their teens to be like that, but I think the reason we was is because we were already backyard wrestlers. We all had that in common already, and it was just something that at that time the pay-per-views were hitting. We wanted to watch. That time you got the Monday Night Wars going on.
Right.
So we would always. Everybody's like, well, which way did you do it? I was like, there was only one way to do it. Okay, Raw was only shown once. Nitro was shown twice. So you just tape Nitro and watch Raw. It's not hard. That's what everybody did. Either they taped it before or after, but that's what they did.
Yeah.
The
Well, I was never big on WWF, so I would
You're
just
more a
watch
WCW guy.
always. Well, during the wars, yeah, WCW, but I mean, I was always I loved it better when it was NWA
Oh yeah,
before it got bought out by Turner, and I mean, even until Hogan showed up,
yeah,
I was constantly always, Crockett, NWA, WCW first. Um, then once Hogan showed up and started bringing all the WWF guys that I couldn't stand watching,
and now you got
he
to
brings
watch
them
them and
in,
where
and then
you
I'm like,
thought you were safe.
damn it, to me both shows were the same at that point. Um, so I loved ECW pulled like I was losing my fandom at that point, and then ECW pulled me out of that funk and got me back into liking wrestling because I couldn't. I was like, I can't stand the cartoony crap
Yeah,
that Vince
lots of
McMahon
people love
thought
that kind of
wrestling
stuff,
was.
man. Lots of people love that corny, tongue in cheek kind of stuff. That's their flavor of wrestling. And I learned a long time ago. I try not to yuck nobody's yum or shit on what somebody else likes. in wrestling. You know what I'm saying? Even if I don't like it myself, if they ask my opinion, I'll tell them, but I'm not going to sit there and just beat the dead horse of something that I know somebody likes just because I don't like it, So a
Well,
lot of people,
that's the difference between us. I'll beat that horse to death and ride it. And
oh yeah.
I've complained about it enough on here, but I think that's what the people like to hear is me bitch about stuff. So,
Well, I think they
I
want to
keep
hear
doing it.
why you feel that way. I think one of the reasons is because you're not afraid to tell why. You're not just like, I can't stand Roderick Strong. F him. He's a piece of garbage. But you'll go into it and be like, okay, I don't like seeing all his backbreakers. I don't like see, I'm not saying you don't like Roddy. I'm
Right.
just saying that's you give a reason why. It's not just a blanket hatred bullshit. You
Well,
know?
and and like you mentioned all the backbreakers. Roderick, I'm fine with. I know Roderick came in, did a lot of IWA stuff. So, you
Yeah.
know, that always like the personal connection always helps make up like if
For
there's
certain people, yeah.
for certain people and like okay, but yeah, like one of the I don't like I've talked about I don't like the pure comedy wrestling. It's got its
All right.
place and it's fine here or there, but entire shows of it or people that do it every match, I not for me. I can't stand it. And I also can't stand when somebody like, you got the Young Bucks and you got the Usos. I'm going to do 75 super kicks in one match.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
guess what? It obviously ain't working if you got to do it 75 times. So do something else. I mean, it's the kid, the far side with the kid just repeatedly sticking the fork in the electrical outlet and getting electrocuted and never learns. It's like it's not working. Do something different. You're trying to win. Obviously you don't know how to do a super kick if it takes 75 of them to, I can remember Chris Adams and Shawn Michaels only needed one.
Yeah.
You need to do 75 of them, learn how to do it right is what I think as I'm watching as a fan.
And
uh
look, I'll tell you one thing though that I'll give you credit for too. Also, um, not to say that you do anything wrong, but one thing that I do think that you do correctly that a lot of people will not say it, will not talk about, is if you do not like something like that, like you're not a huge fan of the comedy part or whatever, even though you don't like a total comedy match, give you like a old school Chris Candido 4-on-4 comedy match, and you'll eat that up. You know what I'm saying? Because that's part of like almost fundamental pro wrestling. They've been doing that since before me and you were ever even born.
right.
So I mean, I where you say you don't like pure comedy matches. At the same time, if it's one of those matches, say it's you know Candido loves those old school kind of matches like they're used to. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but that was one thing that I liked that I could always tell like Ian wouldn't. I didn't see a lot of him doing a whole bunch of that stuff. I always felt like it had more of your flavor to it. Whenever I would see that kind of stuff. With like the 4-on-4 comedy or 3-on-3 comedy matches, and you throw a little bit in there, but you actually do have a wrestling and you're actually telling a story. It's not 95 super kicks. It's not Danhausen dancing on the ring apron for 10 minutes. I'm sorry, that gets on my nerves. I'm not, I don't want to watch him dance. No
Well,
offense.
yeah, I don't have time in my day for any of that stuff. So, but Nick Maniwa is always he's got a lot of friends. I'm like, well, good for him. Make your money, do whatever, but it's it's not for me. I'm outside of the target demographic that they're looking for. As as I look at 50 staring at me in a few months, my opinion ain't going to matter anymore because I'm gonna be too old. They ain't going to worry about what I think about what they're doing. So, get their money and do your stuff, have fun, whatever. You know, I'll just keep plugging along and watching what I like though, and that's just how it is on that. But we were talking about that first IWA show that you went to, and you mentioned Kickboxer and El Perro, which I've talked about on here. That was the matchup that kept getting me to come back after I started going
Oh
in
yeah.
January of 97. Do you remember anything else from that first IWA show that you went to, which I
Oh
guess
yeah.
you
It
said
was
was like
that.
the second show
It
at the
was.
Kmart building?
I want to say it was either the second or third time they had done the Four Corners of Pain, and I had never seen a Four Corners of Pain match live, never. And so, I mean, first off, I get to see. I'm watching. It reminded me of a Tarek and Kickboxers match. There, it reminded me of almost like a ladder match with who is it? With the when Nitro cruiserweights. I mean, because they were doing the exact kind of stuff that the cruiserweights were doing, but they were doing with like ladders, throwing chairs at each other's heads, and it had that ECW feel to it too.
Right,
And that's one thing that people that didn't get to see that because I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some of it out there still, but some of it you so bad you can't watch it from its fifth generation video tape, VHS tape. But I mean, they set a standard. Not there wasn't a whole lot of smaller cruiserweight people getting over and getting the bookings that those kind of guys was getting in the indies at the time. There just
right,
wasn't. I mean, they were built like beautiful Bobby Eaton, or even bigger than that.
right,
Big husky man, and that's what they expected. It was almost they believe people thought it was unbelievable to see these two smaller guys in here going crazy, and or Luthez, believe it or not, used to get mad because of how much Harley Race would sell for the younger guys and the
yep,
smaller guys that were coming around at that time. Because people don't understand, Harley had the belt like 5, 6 times, I think it was, before Flair for even hit his fifth or sixth, and before that it was Luthez, in the Briscoes. But there was a. I remember that leaving that second show of IWA, going by myself and leaving. I remember we were walking in my car and thinking, I have been waiting for years to have some kind of promotion like this where I can go enjoy this with my friends. My friends have been waiting years. I mean, we would come to WCW or WWF when it came to town. And then we actually went to the ECW arena in 97 and 98. Not arena, I'm sorry, ECW Heatwave 98 in Dayton, Ohio. We went to
yeah,
there. I want to say either 98, 99 or 97, 98. Well, I know we went in 98 because that's when Bigelow went through the ramp and we were standing right there. You can see us on the tape still. That was the only time, one of the only times I remember Hayabusa ever being in the United States. And we got to go to that. The next year, a lot of my friends went. Brent Blades. I know Rich had really good seats the next year, but I didn't get to go to that one. I only got to go the one year.
yeah. I had went to more WWF shows when I was growing up because it was easier for us to get to the Rosemont Horizon. So,
Yeah.
um, like me and my mom and dad took me the first time to Rosemont Horizon. They took me to one show, and then once my best friend got to his driver's license, and we started going to the WWF shows at the Rosemont Horizon a couple of times. Went to the UIC Pavilion once to go to a WCW house show during the Dangerous Alliance time. So Flair was in WWF at the time, and not the UIC Pavilion wasn't in the best neighborhood, so we only went the one time to that. Um, but yeah, the being able to find IWA when I did, and with Ben and Les, like that was just so awesome to us. That I mean, it was an hour and a half drive every week coming from Lexington, but we didn't
Yeah.
care. I mean, it
Yeah.
was those shows were so phenomenal, and you got to see such a varied style of wrestling throughout. Everybody just thought that they listened to Jim Cornette, they listened to Jerry Lawler, they listened to Danny Davis, they listened to those
Yeah.
guys, and they just think that IWA was nothing but blood and guts, and you know oh, that was bullshit, hardcore wrestling, and they think that that's all it was, but it
Oh, yeah.
wasn't.
It's
It had
garbage. It's garbage wrestling. Yeah. Yeah.
the because you had I mean, you had pretty much everybody that Jerry Lawler was using would then come over and wrestle,
Oh yeah.
at the Kmart building. So you had all of those guys. You had Tarek kickboxer, and then they started bringing in, you know, their people from Cincinnati area, and then you end up with Suicide Kid coming off the influence of them, and I mean, you had a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
You had multiple different styles on all those shows, and it was cheap,
Yeah.
and
You were getting
you
to
were
see
right on
people.
top of the action. You weren't a mile and a half away like you were in the bigger arenas. And it was just, it was an experience unlike anything I had ever had in my life, and couldn't believe that it was something that was happening. So those shows right off the bat were just phenomenal to go
Oh,
to.
I remember seeing stuff there that would make me almost like, as I'm leaving, being like, did that really happen? Did I really just see the shooting stars out in the crowd from who you were actually on a wrestling television show at that time here in Louisville?
Right.
And I don't remember, I want to say it was Doug, but I know it was Flash come out to the ring and they're yelling back and forth. And at first I'm like, oh, okay, this is, And the next thing I know, Flash is out there punching one of the shooting stars in the face as hard as he can. I don't. You was already there by then, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was right at, I had just started as promoter
Oh,
at
okay.
that point. That was like one of the first things that happened after I came on board.
That's
And
hilarious.
I thought, yeah, man, we're about to get this TV deal, that we were going to take over from the Shooting Stars. So to give some backstory to people listening,
Yeah,
it was Mike Samples promotion, right?
I think so. Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it was like Mike Samples promotion. They had a TV deal in Louisville
yeah,
where their show was on every week. Shooting Stars might have taken it, like Samples might have left,
yeah. Because
and
they
the
were they
Shooting
were still they were
Stars and the
running out of River
shortened
Garden still.
and the Shooting Stars took over. So this was like after USWA had closed down,
Hmm.
and so like I maybe it was even that time slot. Maybe they had taken over that time slot
I'm pretty sure
after
they did. Yeah,
USWA had closed down. So it was like Mike Samples. Then I think Mike Samples left. The Shooting Stars took over, but we were killing them. I mean,
Oh,
we were outdrawing them and just killing
oh
them.
man, that's back when
And
they were he was getting drawn like between what 250 and 350 every single week at the Kmart building. Seems like.
um, it, yeah, every week, and then there was a lot of weeks where it was like 500,
Yeah,
close
yeah,
to
because of the bigger
500.
shows. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
remember he had the big one in Bardstown with Sherry Martel and Vampiro. He had
yes,
that big one there. That one was, I think that's the first time that Ian said he had hit over 600, but don't quote me on that. I'm not quite sure.
yeah,
But I remember
I don't think it got up that high, but
it was a lot. Yeah.
it was a lot.
I remember getting my
And
picture taken with Sherry Martel, and then seeing Vampiro for the first time in the States. That was pretty cool.
yeah, so yeah, so we got, we're killing whatever their company was. I can't even remember.
Oh, yeah, wouldn't.
It might have been like KCW or something, like maybe
Hmm.
Kentuckiana Championship Wrestling, something like that.
Yeah.
But it was the TV Showtime slot. We were killing them, outdrawing them, putting on a better show. So they were getting ready to close down themselves, and they were going to give us the time slot. The only caveat to it was, we had to use them on the shows.
Yeah.
They had to have a landing place that they could come work. Um, Flash Flanagan had been working both shows. He was like
Yeah.
working for them and working for us.
Yeah.
Um, he ended up choosing us over them,
And they ended up
and just
talking a
working
lot of
for us.
smack about him too
Right.
on
So they
TV.
so
Yeah.
they got onto their TV show and said shit like, Flash Flanagan's done wrestling. They retired him. He's bagging groceries now. Shit
Oh
like
yeah.
that on their TV show. And so yeah, when Flash came out and saw them in the crowd, and he knew that they were going to be there,
Yeah.
but then he just lost his cool, and went and beat the fuck out of them and
Yeah.
ran them out of the building. And so I think maybe that,
It would be funny if that was, I mean, comical almost if that was the one time that that kind of stuff happened.
but
But
it
this is, it's not.
always happened. Like every time IWA had any chance to grow, anytime IWA had any chance to like make it to that next level, some shit like that would happen.
Oh,
And
I can't.
it was like maybe baby Danhausen was cursing IWA. I don't know. Maybe that's what the hell happened. I'm not sure,
I
but
remember
it was
it
every
wasn't
time.
very much short. It wasn't very shortly after that. I want to say the Misfits. Is that right? And Real Deal, Billy McNeil or whatever.
That
Is
was before.
that was before the Shooting Stars?
That was before the Shooting Stars. I'm
Yeah.
almost 100% sure because that was I was still a fan at that point, and I think that show I missed. I ended up missing
Okay.
that show
Oh.
because it was like a summer show, so I was
Mhm.
back in Chicago during the break after the school year was done at UK. So
Gotcha.
I went back to Chicago. Well, not Chicago, but to Morris.
Yeah.
Um, and went home for the break and ended up hearing about it. Like I think Ben and Les were there, but yeah, I don't even know. I don't even know like what the backstory was on that
Um,
one that caused the Misfits to
he did a
beat him up
radio
and
show. Yeah, he did a radio show, and he was like, one of the Misfits' name was I think Harley, if I'm not mistaken.
something like
And he,
Harley Domino or something like that,
yeah, and he was
or
like
Derek
Harley. He goes,
Domino and Harley Lewis. I think maybe that's what it
he
was.
was like Harley couldn't wrestle his way out of wet paper bag, and this real deal Billy McNeil, he's a big guy now, but back then he wasn't that big a guy at all. He was kind of a smaller dude, and he was basically talking crap about him, and he had just gotten into that promotion. It had something to do with Carluza too, if I'm not mistaken, Dennis Carluza, and because I know that he brought a lot of people around, and
Right.
those Misfit guys I think came from Car. That's how they
Yeah.
IWA.
Yeah, they were part of the NWA invasion that Corluza came in with. Yeah.
Yep. And I remember they came out though, and they brought Billy, that Billy Real or Billy Neal, whatever his name was.
I think
He
it
had
was I think it was the Billy the highlight reel or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he did not. He had no idea those guys was there. When he saw them come running from the locker room, I had never seen a grown man run as fast as he could towards Dixie Highway. I'm not playing. He ran
Yeah.
straight towards Dixie Highway. He got they got in like a couple punches apiece. He was gone, straight out the front door in his wrestling gear, going to Dixie Highway. And I'll never
Yep.
forget that.
Yeah, and I think I remember the story that I heard was they chased him out the building and he went running down Dixie Highway. And anybody that's but this is like a busy ass
Oh yeah,
everything that you can think of is on this damn. I mean, this is any city, pick your busiest thoroughfare, and that's what Dixie Highway is in Louisville,
yeah,
Kentucky. And he's running down the highway, like running down the damn street. And they said like he probably got like half a mile, and then realized he didn't know where the hell he was at.
yeah.
And he's just lost, run from the building and lost.
Oh, every time people tell me about him running down Dixie and me walking out and seeing part of that, that was, and it was, I mean, that was just two occasions there. There was another occasion where this is later on, but this is totally, oh, the one thing I was gonna say, the Shooting Stars, you know who they did bring with them coming over, who stayed for a long time, was Corporal Robinson.
Yeah.
He wrestled with the Shooting Stars, and he didn't come to wrestle for IWA until they were getting to make that big deal. And he came. He already knew Flash and those guys, but that's where Corporal came from. Was the Shooting Stars little KCW or whatever?
Yeah.
Because I remember that's what Cash was still doing a whole lot of Cash, Ox, Pondo, Ian. Those were the four big hardcore guys at the time. Um, Roland was still doing the Tornado Taz stuff. He hadn't really stepped up to the. He'd done a few, hardcore things here and there, but he wasn't
Right.
like in every show one of those guys out there doing that stuff. And then when Corporal came, I just remember walking out the front of the house after the show's over with. We stay to hang out with some of the people, and Corporal and Cash are together, and they're walking out with me and Jeremy and a couple other people. And Cash goes, "Hey, Corp, man, you should tell Ian, man, you want to do some death matches." And I remember Corporal going, "Oh man, I'll do any of that stuff. I don't care, whatever." But I just remember looking at Cash and being like, "Because you're tired of doing." That's what I thought, because I knew at that time that he was trying to get into do other things. You know what I'm saying? Uh,
Right.
and I remember when Wolfie D came to he was Slash whatever then though the big barn. And
Mhm.
I remember I was in the back working security at the time, and I looked, and Roland was sitting right next to Wolfie, and he was talking to him, and Cashflow walked by, and he had his green Cashflow outfit on and
Yeah.
everything. And I remember Wolfie was Wolfie. We'll leave it at that. And he looked at Roland, and he goes, "Look at that guy right there. Look at him. He looks just like PG-13. He could be the third member of PG-13, you know." And then Roland was like, "I helped him work out that gimmick. I'm the one that was like, hey, be the Wizard of Wall Street, be cash flow, And I just remember Wolfie was like, it makes you mad when I see that. I felt like going, well, who was doing it before you, man? You know what I'm saying? I mean, you
Right.
can't nitpick everybody. There's only so many wrestling moves in that you can.
Right.
But I do remember that. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, no, no. And you're talking about Wolfie, so that was another one of the famous shoot incidents
Oh
at the
yeah,
Kmart
that
building with
the Kmart building. Oh,
yeah, so were you there that
oh
night
yeah,
with so
yeah.
what is your memories of the Ox Pondo PG-13?
Well,
uh
it seemed like they were starting to get a little bit rough, but then when Ox went around a corner or something, and I remember Wolfie shoved him kind of hard or mugged him or something, and when he did, that's when Ox grabbed that thumbtack bat and he hit Wolfie with it, and I seen Wolfie's face light up. And so Wolfie like went off on him for a minute, and then Ox like shoved him again or pushed him, and they're getting ready to get in the ring. And you see Pondo trying to damage control, maybe
yeah.
try to get talk to Jamie or whatever, and then they get in the ring, and Wolfie throws the bat down, and it squares up like a UFC fight. And Ox gets in the ring, and so they're sitting there for a minute, and the next thing you know, Wolfie serves him up like a three-piece, boom, 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 hits him like three or four times,
Yep.
and they were shots. They weren't work shots, and he hit him hard, and then Ox got out of the ring, and he's still trying to play it up and stuff, but he's mad as fire. You could tell. And Pondo went and got him, didn't let him get back in the ring and fight with Wolfie anymore. But people were giving him all kinds of shit. I think like the next week on the mic, Ian even said something about that's why you got your ass kicked by Wolfie D. But yeah, that was another one of them where afterwards people was like, "Oh man, that wasn't a shoot," and I'm like,
The hell it wasn't.
"Yeah,
Wolfie was ready to kill him.
oh man, like I said, they scored up, get ready to go, and what Ox wasn't scared to fight anybody, and so he puts his dukes up, but Wolf hit him like three or four times, just like body head, and I was like, oh shit, he's for real. Those are
Yeah.
real punches. But the Ox Harley story that a lot of people probably want to hear, and I'll go ahead and tell it. I'm not proud of this moment or anything, but there was him, a lot of stuff happened at this one match at Total Eclipse Teen Club. Um, the main thing is there was this broom, but it's one of them old school janitor brooms, like a mop thing, and it was all metal with the coating, the plastic hard coating over it. And like it was really hard. It wasn't like a piece of wood. It was a hard metal thing. And first off, earlier in the match, for some reason, I don't know what happens between the referee and kickboxer, but kickboxer shoves that referee into that concrete side wall, and the referee's shoulder comes out of place. And so they're going at that, and then Ox grabs that broom handle or not broom, mop handle, and way less. He hits Corporal like twice, maybe three times. Now I don't hear what happens after this. This is all hearsay because I wasn't in the locker room for this, but I hear they walk to the back and. I heard there was some scissors involved, and Corporal's trying to. I mean, Ox is going after Corporal with scissors, or Corporal's going after Ox with
No,
scissors.
no, no, no. Because
No,
I was in the locker room.
okay, but then I heard
So
that Corporal stole him like five times in his face, and it was over too. So I don't
that
know.
happened. So
Okay.
I'll tell you what happened.
Okay.
So I know this was right after Corporal and Ian had that like no rope barbed wire salt match
Oh
in
yeah.
like Salem at the armory.
Yeah.
And it was the one
Is
where
that where Corporal got cut?
yes.
Yeah.
So like Ian hit him with glass and the glass like bounced up off the floor and came back up and nicked him like right on the temple
Yeah.
and
Right
cut
at the
him
artery. Yeah.
right at the artery. And he luckily the armory was right by the hospital, so they were able to get him to the hospital quick enough. They sewed him up, but they didn't realize that it was a no ropes barbed wire salt match.
Yeah.
So he had salt in the wound and they didn't know it.
Ugh.
So they didn't clean out the salt. So then they like stitched him up to get the bleeding to stop, but then it still had all that salt in there, which caused like an infection and almost killed him a second time
Yeah.
before they went, figured out what was going on and got it cleaned up and everything. And then like he's back wrestling like a couple weeks later,
Oh yeah.
you know. So I remember in the back, he's like before they go out there, he's telling them, don't hit me where my wound is.
Don't hit me
Don't
by
hit
my
me.
head. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't hit me on that side of the head. And Ox is like, okay, no problem. And so then they get out there and they have the match. And like you say, Ox takes this freaking, metal mop stick
Yeah.
and hits him like three times real hard
Right
where
in the.
he's hurt
Yeah.
already. So like they get into the back, and in the back at the Total Eclipse Teen Club. I mean, this was a teen club. So
Yeah.
there was
Pool
like
tables.
a bunch of pool tables
Yeah.
and everything is in there, like arcade games, pool tables, all these things for teenagers to do, right? So all this stuff is in there and they're like screaming at each other. And I mean, I know that you
Oh, we
guys
could hear him.
probably
Yeah.
hear it out in the crowd
Oh yeah.
when they're back there just screaming at each other. And Ox is like, I don't know what your problem is. And Corporal's like, I fucking told you,
Mhm.
about my head. And then you go out there, oh, I forgot. I'm sorry. And at that point, you know, Ian was just done with it. And I don't know if he was done with Ox or like if Ox had done something that to just piss off Ian, but Ian was like, that's it. You know, done with the fucking talking. It's like you two are gonna have it out and you're gonna fight. And I mean, he like made them. He was like, you're gonna fight
Yeah.
it out right now, and this is over. And so he made like all the guys push we ended up pushing all the pool tables together in the back and like made a space. And Ox fought the same way that he fought Wolfie,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so like they both put up their dukes and
Mhm.
Ox throws this slow jab and he's like boom and he hits Corporal and then Corporal like video game just like bap, 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 rapid fire and like just beat him with about 6-7 punches. And like to Ox's credit, he didn't go down, but he like stepped back and he was like, all right, you whoop my ass, I'm done. And
Mhm.
he sat down, you know and it was like, all right, you whoop my ass, I'm done. No more of that. I ain't about to do that. If you could hit me 7 times before I can throw more than
Exactly.
one jab, he's like, I'm done. This ain't gonna go well for me. And we're all just in the back, like, what did we just witness? That was
Oh, well,
that was a fucking murder, you know.
within like 10 minutes of that happening, everybody that was still there found out. Everybody was running out telling all the different stories about it. So, like I said, someone had told us that Corp had the scissors or something, and that's why that Ian had told him y'all are gonna fight. But that was the big thing, was that Ian, it was like fucking Fight Club back there, boy. We cleared out of space and told him to just go at it. And
Yeah.
then the very next week, I walk in the door for the show at the Total Eclipse Teen Club, or whatever. And I was sitting there, and as I walk in, I see Ox sitting there, and he's looking mad. He looks, disgusted. And he goes, "Guess you're gonna whoop my ass too now." And I was like, "Nah, man, I like you, Ox. You're a good dude." He's okay. And then I walk over, maybe 4, 5 feet, and Corp goes, "Come here, man. Come here. You gotta do me a favor, man." And I was like, "What's up?" He's like, "Well, you heard what happened last week." I was like, "Dude, everybody knows what happened last week, okay? Everybody."
Corporal had done told everybody what
Oh
happened.
yeah. He goes, "Well, I'm telling you, man, he's from what I understand, man, that the if I'm not mistaken, I could have this mistaken. I think it had a lot to do. Ox was one of the first ones to jump ship over to the BBW when y'all were getting ready to lose the teen club, and he jumped ship real quick. And but so I think that's part of the reason why Ian was like, because he knew what was going to happen. As soon as he did, everybody else started doing the same thing too, and it
Right.
just that's just the way
Yeah,
it
so I
was.
think yeah, that's the reason why Ian was like,
Yeah,
yeah, now that you mentioned the timing of it, yeah, that was the
I,
timing of it. So yeah, he had went and started doing the BBW shows. So Ian was like, Corporal, whoop his, that's it, shut up, you're gonna fight, because he
yeah.
knew that Corporal would whoop his ass, especially
Oh,
after watch. If Wolfie D whooped his ass, you knew damn well Corporal would.
oh yeah. And I remember Corporal going, "Man, we gotta yell it. We gotta let everybody here know what's up, though." He's like, he goes, "Can we do the no, 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 no?" He goes, "Because I know because we usually had at least a whole row of between us and the back row hoes or the girls or whatever, they call themselves that, not me."
Right, the girls
But
called
yeah, we
themselves
always
that, so
had
don't get
at
on
least.
Brian. They
That's right.
proudly
I didn't
they
even know anything
proudly they
about that title.
proudly they proudly called themselves the back row hose. So
Oh yeah.
that was the
We,
they named themselves.
yeah, when we had we always at least have, 8, 10, sometimes more than that. It just depends on how many people showed up that Thursday or that Saturday, whatever. And I was like, "But why would we say no, 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 goodbye? Where's he going?" And at that time, I wasn't privy to the information that he was about to be done with and gonna have to go. That they had already found news just about they were gonna lose the teen club. They didn't know for sure. So I was like, instead of that, man, let's do why don't we do Corporal Robinson whooped your ass? And he's like, "How can you do that?" When I was like, "Corporal Robinson whooped your ass, dude, dude, And imagine about maybe 90 people watching a wrestling show, and about 30 of them are singing this song.
Yep.
And it wasn't just for like 10 seconds, it was like the
Like the whole
full,
match.
oh,
The
they just kept
whole
going. And,
match.
and Ox stared at all of us like he was going to kill us. Like he was going to come out to the show. He got outside the ring. And to our credit, we just stood there. I mean, was he going to whoop all 30 of us? I mean,
Right.
but yeah, there was so many of us yelling it. But I just remember people talking about that later on, and I was like, that was so disrespectful. Why was we such shitheads? But at the same time, we were laughing. Other people were laughing. I think poor Ox caught the worst of it. I really think he did. But I
Yeah,
mean,
he was in tears. He went
yeah,
back into the he went like after that match was over, and after that he like he was almost in tears, and he went back into the locker room, and he sat down, and he just immediately got dressed, packed his bag, and he stood up, and he walked over to Ian, got his pay, and he said, "I quit," and he walked out the building.
I saw him about maybe a year later at a BBW show because Jeremy started wrestling for BBW and so did Roland. And I saw Ox, and he was doing mat wrestling with Todd Morton. and I had absolute Michael Todd Stratton, whatever he called himself at that time, and they were like just it was before the show started, and they're like rolling around like Eddie Gilbert and Mysterio was, you know what I'm saying? I mean, people are Eddie Gilbert. I'm sorry, Eddie Guerrero, and like I heard about that, you know, that the big roller fest, and I just remember Todd Morton. And I'm like, since when did Ox Harley learn how to wrestle? What is this? I had no idea that Ox Harley could. It was definitely a slowed down Memphis style, but you know what I'm saying? It wasn't shitty. And I thought that he could only do like death matches and shit because I didn't know anything different. Because when he came to IWA, that's pretty much what he was doing, you know?
That was all that he did in IWA.
Yeah,
He didn't do
yeah,
anything that wasn't that. Yeah.
yeah. I remember that one show where he was in a cage or whatever and he started getting sick to this. Oh, it was awful. It smelled so bad. I've seen quite a few people puke in IWA wrestling rings, though. Not just one. There's been quite a few people.
Yeah. It's happened many a time.
Oh yeah.
Happened many a time. So before we keep moving on here, one last thing I wanted to talk about of the Kmart building days. Just what are you? Do you have any memory? Did you make it to both Eddie Gilbert memorials, and do you have any memories
The
from those
first
two shows?
the first Eddie Gilbert Memorial, I think that the one that had Dory Funk Jr. versus
Tommy
Tommy Gilbert,
Gilbert.
Eddie
Yep,
Gilbert's dad,
yep.
and then it
And
had.
then it had, the Terry Funk Doug Gilbert like chain match.
Oh, okay, yeah. See, I don't the Terry Funk Doug Gilbert chain match. I remember it, but I was a huge Terry Funk guy, so it seems like I remember that more. I may have been, no offense, I drink quite a bit back then at those IWA shows at the Kmart building because, you know, they had the beer.
Yeah,
And that's one of the first places, you know, that they actually, I remember being where I was old enough to buy beer. I don't know about the second one, but my Terry Funk memory from IWA Mid South is the one at the bar that was
with
over there. Is
Shakey's
it Shakey's?
where he wrestled Tracy.
Tracy, and they went all over the place. They busted like two or three of the big ceramic bar lights. I know those were money, but Funk was bleeding and he's crawling up those back steps. And I remember he's had his hand like reaching down to the fans, and my mark ass is over there going, "Get him, Funker! Get him!" Screaming, holler, you know, and his blood is dripping down. It's like landing on my hands. I'm like, people like, "Oh, it's so gross." I'm like, I ain't washing his hand. What are you talking about? It's Terry Funk's blood.
Yeah,
This is one of the greatest matches I've ever seen in my life. And that same night, well, something always crazy happens whenever something good happens. That same night, three or four people get drunk and they're outside. And I don't remember who it was. One of the wrestlers walked out there and they started shit with them. And so immediately, um, rest in peace, DJ Donnie. And me walk out there to try to see what goes on, and then the drunk guy kind of like walks off across the street or whatever. But I look, and it was Ian that the dude was out there arguing with. And I'm like, outside of Shakey's now, whether it was the time that Kickboxer came off the balcony or whether it was the time that Terry Funk and Smothers, because they didn't go back there after Funk and Smothers, I don't think. I think it's the last wrestle match they had at Shakey's.
and I
But
think
I
there was
could be
one
wrong.
more after that.
There might be one before or one after, but I know there was
I think there
another.
was one after because there was like one after that had. I think it might have had Sabu at it, and there was. I know there was Doug and Tommy,
Okay. I just
and I know I was
I
there,
remember
and I
Kickboxer
think
coming
and I
off
think there
that
was like one more after that, and that was when maybe Tower of Doom was there because it was
mm,
somebody's underage girlfriend got caught drinking, and the
uh,
and the alcohol, tobacco, firearms people came in
wow.
and tried to shut the show down um, because they saw the underage girl drinking.
That sounds about like some Tower of Doom. So
So I'm thinking it might maybe Tower of Doom was on that show and it was like his girlfriend.
the Macho
Uh,
Warrior Rick Hogan, man.
yeah, I think it might have been him. It was somebody.
He was the first ever IWA World Heavyweight Champion, wasn't
He was,
he?
yes,
Yeah.
he won the tournament to win the first title. Yep.
I remember that. I remember somebody tried to tell me that they remember him being in there. I was like, No, he wasn't the Macho Warrior Rick Hogan then. He was somebody
No, he
else.
was always Tower of Doom.
Yeah.
He was
I
always
liked
Tower
him
of
there.
Doom.
I
Yeah.
remember the after the Kmart building, of course, we went to talk about the Toy Club's Teen Club.
Yep.
During all each of those two places, one thing that Ian did was he started doing ring rentals at the Kmart building. And that's how us
Yes.
backyard guys kind of got to know each other is because he double booked a ring rental with Brent Blades, the Rick, Chris Class, Richard X, Isaiah. They had all that group, and then he with us with my group with the Lock family. And at that time, we were already wrestling with Homer and Sweet because we met those guys at IWA, so they would already come to the ring rentals and stuff. And then we had the Lock family guys. It's funny because Mitch Page is like, I just started training, and the Lock family would have 11-hour pro-am shows, start at noon, wouldn't be over with till 1 o'clock in the morning. And he was absolutely right. We would start like 4, we get out there like 10. It'd be like a 6-hour show. There would be like 40 people in the back. It was awful.
So you guys were running TPI before Ian did, huh?
Oh, it was awful. But at Dixie, whenever we had the ring rentals there, he got to run the concession stand. We just didn't charge nobody any money to get in, so it didn't. What hadn't become later on that became a legal issue because Joe Bailey tried to rent the Bardstown National Guard Army for because at that time we had all the backyard feds that came together and we met J.C. Bailey's guys. Of course, they were probably, I'd say we was about 19, 20, 21 years old, and they was probably like 15. They were kids. And so I remember Joe, first time we ever went to Bardstown, and a couple people trickled in and out and started watching the show or whatever that we put on. And then, JC had his little had his friends wrestling with us. The very next show we came out there, we brought the public, what's it called? Public access television guys to film it. Man, you would think that it was the Bardstown National Fair. I mean, half the IWA crew was there, and I mean, we started at like 2:30 in the afternoon. We was grilling out hot dogs and hamburgers, and the wrestling rings in the backyard. It's just a good time, man. But the we always had we always try to pivot someplace for us to go to wrestle, and lots of times that meant taking seminars from Ian. And if you didn't have the money, he worked something out with you where you could, like Richard X. I know for a fact, Richard paid him not that much, $100 up front. And after that, he told Richard, he said, "You just work as a referee and work the rest off." Because Richard was the first one out of all of us that did anything with IWA. And then I want to say it was Richard and then Jeremy and then Brent Blades, if I'm not mistaken,
I
in that
think that
order.
was the order. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I know for a fact that people always don't give him the credit, but Mitch and Ian are like 3A and 3B because Cash Flow was the first Ian Rotten student ever. And then Harry Bay Magna Palmer was the second one. And
Yes.
then and Jeremy and Mitch, Mitch Page, they were 3A and 3B. No, I'm not saying he didn't help out Tad, Roland, and he didn't help out Kid when he came over and things like that. I'm talking about somebody that, this guy
From
came from the,
scratch.
yeah, from the Ian Rotten School.
Yeah.
So that was cool. I attended 9 IWA seminars ran by Ian Rotten. 9. I survived all 9, even though I wanted to die after all 9. But I did survive all 9. But I also blew my shoulder out and hurt my knee. I just was too old to be doing the silly stuff I was doing. But I was having fun, and it's just what if you think about times of your life in your 20s when you do things like, oh, that's just what you did. That's IWA is what we did. You know,
Right.
like Rolling Hard. Rest in peace, Tornado Taz. He was the first one. We gave him a lot of crap because he was he was a heel at the time, and he was managed by Billy the P at the Kmart building. And so we would give him, I mean, cuss him out bad because that's what you did there. It
Right.
wouldn't like Louisville Gardens where you just be like, "You guys stink. You stink, chicken. You're a chicken." No, out of being Mid South, you're going "fuck you," and
Yep.
that's just the way it is. That's what made it fun, And you get grown. You're a teenager and you're cussing out grown ass men. It's fun stuff. But he always Ian picked us up out of the crowd, a lot of us, because we started renting the ring, and then he would be like, "Do you want to train to be a wrestler?" And he got to cherry pick the guys out of there. And then when we had the big, huge, gigantic programs there would be, like I said, 50, 60 people in the locker room. He can just go through there and be like, "Who's that redhead kid's name?" He's pretty good. You know what I'm saying? And he
Right.
got like a lot of crop of dudes to train from there. And I mean, and then the crazy thing is, half of his staff, by the time he got getting ready to go over to the building in Clarksville, known as the Big Blue Barn, a lot of those guys went with ICP. And so when that happened, he picked Nathan Future, Daniel Quinn. It's supposed to be Isaiah, but the last minute kickboxer takes Isaiah with him. And
Mhm.
so Isaiah ends up going to the clowns. So he picks up Daniel Quinn too. And instead of and Richard X starts wrestling and he starts having Chris Kinzer, but he came back. He had just came back from Kaida Pro. He didn't train with Ian. He trained at Kaida Pro. And I forget Sanjay Dutt. That was the guy that was the class before class in Baltimore. So he liked it there. But he came back and started reffing, and then X was wrestling. So you had X, Richard X, Daniel Quinn, um, Nathan Future, Jay Prodigy. All these guys are the ones that was wrestling. Those were the guys when they first moved into the building there in the blue building. Half those guys a year earlier came from the crowd.
Yeah, that's like the King of the Death matches, 97. Everybody like jokes that there's like a drinking game where if you just look in the crowd and every time you see somebody in the crowd that went on to like be on an IWA show, that have a drink and you'd probably die of alcohol poisoning by before the show's over.
Oh, I guarantee
Because
it.
that was, you know, that was like one of the, if you look at it though, that was like one of the downfalls of IWA is everybody that was buying tickets every week ended up being on the shows. So then he lost all those ticket sales.
Yeah, it's like, and it started getting that way again towards the end when it came back in 2013 to not the same Kogo building it was in 2003, but over by there. When it came back in 2013, that gym it was packed. I don't know to this day how many people were there, but I want to say the main event was Simon Says and Ian doing bar boards, and it was around I think they ran maybe two shows there in 2013 and may have been a few more. But the coolest part about that is right around TPI 2015, we just because of where we always sat at was the same side as they did commentary. And it was Chris Ayers and Nick Maniwa doing commentary. Well, around 2015, for the TPI that's on there, Axel was in town, and I remember Chris Ayers telling me he was like, "I'm gonna do he goes, pick whatever match you want, and you can do commentary." And I was like, "You sure?" And Manawa's like, "Yeah, you've been doing the podcast. You got this. It'll be all right." And so I'm like, "All right, cool. I'm doing Thatcher and Chris Hero." If you give me a choice, I'm gonna pick what I think is gonna be the best match on the card. And so as Thatcher's coming to the ring, I see Ian come walking over. And he sits down next to Manawa. And he looks at me and he was like, "Was this the match you picked?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, too bad. I'm calling this one. And I'm like, all right. And so Ian calls that one. And then the next one that comes out is Jonathan Gresham versus Isaiah. And so I was like, you sure, man? And he's like, yeah, you can call this one. So Gresham and Howe was the first ever match that I commentated. But the whole time I'm doing it, I got Ian Rotten on one side of me and Axel Rotten on the other. Just like staring at every word that I say. And talk about being intimidated for a minute there. And afterwards, the best thing was Axel was like, the only thing I can tell you is don't call, I forget, I called one of the wrestlers, I called him fat or something. And he's like, if it's a heel, he goes, I know lots of people say it's okay to do that. He goes, but what if somebody's listening to this and all day long they get called fat? You know, he goes, why not just call him ugly? Because ugly's subjective. Call him ugly instead of fat. And that coming out of Axel's mouth was like a shining light. Like I couldn't believe that he's sitting here, giving me advice when I didn't even really know him that well at that time. I mean, I met him, I talked to him a few times, but man, he's there for about like at least a half hour after the match that I did, just giving me tips here and there and telling me what to say. And right after the match was over with, I said, that was all right? And he goes, yep, that was good. And he got up and walked away. I mean, I asked him later about it, but it was cool enough because as soon as I asked Axel, he just boom, he just started coming out with, hey, don't call him fat, call him ugly. He goes, ugly subjective. Fat, he goes, somebody may be called that their whole day. They don't want to come to a wrestling show and hear that too, you know? So that kind of made a little bit of sense to me to be able to sit under that tree. So the first few matches I did commentary for, afterwards, if Axel was anywhere near, I'd be like, "Hey man, will you listen in and let me know?" And he did. He'd shoot straight with me if he thought I did something wrong or didn't say, said something that wasn't quite appropriate, which sounds really weird for commentary for IWA, but
Right? Yeah,
yeah,
there wasn't much that was off limits on IWA commentary, that's for sure.
yeah. But that made me happy that I got to do that, and I did it off and on again from probably 2016 to when IWA closed up shop. I did commentary pretty much with Nick Maniwa. I would step off and watch some of the matches with my son, or there's some of the shows I wasn't there because at one time he was running like 4 times a week out in Memphis, and it's not that far, but it's still 16 miles the other side of the bridge, and sometimes I just didn't want to go 4 times a week.
Well, I don't blame you on that one.
Yeah, but I think that the reason me and you wasn't as close as we was back in the day, and it makes sense too if you think about it, is like you were kind of more like Brent Blades, straight edge, you weren't very much of a I don't think you're still not a drinker, are you?
Never,
You don't drink at all, do you?
never, not
Yeah,
at all.
yeah. And see, back day, that was us, that wrestling, drinking, smoking and trying to pick up on the women and the girls. That's what we did, That was part of it. And I was a part of that group a little bit more than I was. I mean, don't get me wrong, the BFE story I wanted to tell is the second week at the Blue Barn. Second show you guys are gonna have. The first show was a mess with the music. So Donnie was like, I quit, I ain't gonna do it no more then. And so Ian asked me, do you want to, instead of doing security, do you want to play the music? And I was like, yeah, I guess. And so, but I'd never done it, didn't know anything about it. And BFE was up there with me and he was like, I was like, what do we do with this? This predates DVD CDs. This is
Right.
a cassette tape that you got to get to the point where it's supposed to be at when you hit play so that this person can come out. So you had to go to somebody's car and cue it up to that position. Well, I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, I don't know how to do all this. And I remember Eric Fate looking at me and going, I'll do it, but you're gonna have to go tell Ian. And I was like, deal. And so I walked in there. I was like, man, I don't even have a cassette player in my car. I said, he does. I said, he's been sitting up there. He knows what Donnie does. I said, is it okay if he does that and I just go back to my security job? He goes, but you hate doing security. I said, yeah, but I don't even know what I'm doing here. And
Right.
so for 15 minutes, I was the out of bit music guy. And then I asked him, he said, yeah, and then it became Eric. And I think Eric did it up until Maniwa took over, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah. He did it for quite a while. I remember, we called him BFE, Big Fucking Eric.
Yep.
And there was a night he ended up going on a trip to Carmine's in Milwaukee with me and Ian, and it was the three of us. And he happened to go on the most eventful of the trips
That's good.
because we left in the middle of a snowstorm,
Oh, God.
and it was horrible. And we got to exit. We were in between exit 190. It was like 193 and 201 on 65 North
Yeah.
in Indiana. So we almost to Rensselaer,
Yeah.
in between Lafayette and Rensselaer in IWA Mid South lores of shows run, going up 65. And I mean, it's miserable out. And I'm behind a semi truck, and I go to pass the semi, and I hit black ice in my Jeep Cherokee and immediately lose control. And we're just spinning in circles going down the interstate. And every time we would spin around, you would see the lights of the semi I had just passed. And we're like, oh God, oh God,
We're
oh
going to
God,
die.
we're going to die as we're spinning. And I swear to this day, it felt like we did about 10 to 12 revolutions, circles going down the interstate. And then I just go head on into the concrete divider as we're on the overpass. We had just passed, it's 193, whatever that exit number is. It's like
Yeah.
193. We had just passed that exit. So we're on like the overpass area where the road's going underneath the interstate. And I go head in to the concrete wall, and the back tires come up off the ground, and we almost like flipped over and down onto the road below. And like, luckily the tires
So it
come back
almost went
down.
like ass over tea kettle.
Yes.
Oh, fuck.
And we're like,
I shit my pants.
oh, we thought we were going to die that way. The semi's still coming towards us. We thought we were going to die that way. Luckily, the semi comes to a stop before it gets to us. The tires come back down on the ground, and the Jeep stays. We didn't flip.
That's good.
And we're like shaken to hell. We're like, holy fuck, holy fuck, holy fuck. And I get out of the car, and I almost eat shit because it's so icy.
Oh, yeah.
And like, I could tell like Ian was just still like in his seat. He was like,
Yeah.
holy shit.
Shock. Yeah.
He's like holding his shoulder. I think he dislocated his shoulder, hitting like the dashboard when we hit. But I could see that BFE was getting out of the back door. And I go, careful, BFE, it's slick out. And he's already on the ground.
He already fell.
He already fell. And he's like, dead out on the laying in the road.
Yeah.
In the semi. Luckily, because of the semi, everybody else is going around us. So we were like, okay. And the semi driver helped us, get a hold of a tow truck, and like kept the traffic away from us until like the tow truck came and got us to where we were going.
Yeah.
But like, we thought we were dead. And that was Ian called Carmine. I stayed behind to like take care of the car and shit. Ian called Carmine to have somebody come down and get him
Yeah.
to take him the rest of the way so he could make the show. And I stay behind to deal with the car. I think BFE went with Ian so that he would have somebody to sell his merch and all that bullshit or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was like after that was when we got back, that's when Ian was like, okay, I'm gonna marry Patty before I end up dying. You know, and so I'm sorry, Patty. You might have been able to dodge a bullet there if we'd have just made it to Milwaukee in one piece. He might have still held out and not married you. I don't know, um, but yeah, that was just like a just
Scary, man.
crazy, scary incident that BFE was a part of, and yeah, he was a good kid and around for a while, and then I don't know why he ended up stopping. Probably he got tired of Ian's bullshit, like everybody else did. Um,
Yeah, I remember somebody told me after they started back up around 2016 or 17. I remember one time that, and it was, I'm pretty sure it was Bentley. It was Reed Bentley. And he told me, he was like, hey, man, you've been around IWA a lot longer than me, but, everybody has a shelf life. When it comes to IWA Mid South, everybody has a shelf life. And he goes, and that's just the way it is. He goes, and lots of times some people we know have a second go around, third go around, and the only reason why I'd say that we even went was because when Mac Daddy Mike put on the D1W show, and then Rick Brady took over and had his versions of D1W, my kids were little at that time. And so I was taking both my sons to the wrestling shows because my friends would bring their kids. And so it was kind of like passing that generational thing on to the kids. And I remember when Ian did Colt Cabana's podcast, he was talking about, he's like, what about like the kids coming to see the death matches? And Ian's like, well, let me tell you something. I got a friend of mine, his name is Big B, known him since like 1996. And I only have kids prices because of him. He said the only reason I have kids prices is because Brian wants to be able to bring his kids. I've known him a long time, and he has the right to bring his kids to a death match if he wants to. And I was like, yeah, at that time, my kids are like 12 too. They weren't like 7 or 8 too. They're getting a little older. But lots of people didn't agree with that. They thought that it was, the death matches aren't a place for kids. And to me, I think it's each its own, and if the kids are ready to see that or not. Because I remember watching Memphis wrestling when I was a kid, and everybody was bleeding.
right,
I mean, don't get me wrong, there wasn't gussets and light tubes, but there still was blood. The only thing that changed was, I think, was it got a little more with ECW, brought around the raunchy. You know what I'm saying?
right.
Brought that little edge around. So, but that was good stuff. I remember there's so many people gone now, and it's crazy. I guess it makes me feel old talking about it, but that I met from the time of when I very first started being just attending as a fan and paying my money to get into IWA, to the point of where I did commentary, to the point of where security. But I met so many people, not just the wrestlers, but there was other fans. Like I just talked about Mac Daddy Mike. Bless him, rest in peace. He's gone on, and then Vic Von Erich. I mean, that was Big Vic Philpott. If you were a fan of IWA Mid South around that time, everybody knows who Vic was. And Miss
Vic was my
Donna.
first fan.
Yep, he was
He
a
was
huge fan of
he was the
Jay
one. He
Prodigy.
was the one that gave me the nickname the Esteemed. He was like Jim Fadden's classy. I like him, and like from that grew like where I was the esteemed Jim Fan, and Nick Maniwa made me a custom back when they had I guess it was, they called it like the classics or whatever for the Legend series that
Yeah,
they were doing. He made me put like got a class WWE classics figure box and made a custom figure of me and put it in there, and because of Big Daddy Vic. It was, Vic Von Erich. It was,
Esteemed.
the esteemed Jim Fannin and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, Vic was a great guy. And
Oh, Vic was there that night when they played Brass Monkey, and we didn't know Jeremy was supposed to go and be wrestling that night, and you and Les are sitting there fighting to see who's going to bring him out on his shoulders. I mean, that night was a totally different night. I mean, they even was like throwing chairs at each other's heads. Him and Kid was. I mean, it was a. I ne- Besides the night that match happened, I've never seen that match ever again. I don't think it was taped that night for some reason. Somebody
well, a
told
lot
me,
of what would happen at the Total Eclipse Teen Club is, there was like the DJ area that they
yeah,
had to like to play where, because it was a club, so they had like
yeah,
the little DJ area, and it had like the little ledge on it, and he would just set there somebody like it wasn't his, because never went out to actually buy one, but like whoever it was, they had like the camcorder, and he would just set it on the ledge, point it towards the ring, and you just hit record, and then you would hope that somebody would like remember to go back halfway through the show and switch the tapes during like a intermission or a break. And like if the action went out of the ring and moved, there was nobody there to run the camera, so they would just
yeah.
be fighting off camera. And
Oh, so
if
the
somebody
hard
just
cam
and
was
so
just a little, yeah,
if somebody decided to stand in the way, you're just getting the back of somebody's head, because they're blocking the fucking camera, because they're not paying attention, or they don't give a shit that they're blocking the camera. And or you'd just have where the tape would run out in the middle of a match, and so you'd have like the beginning of a match, and then it would just end.
yeah.
And so
That's the
there
one
there was
thing.
like so many times where there was just the tape doesn't exist. He never even bothered to do it. Like whoever wasn't at the show, so didn't bring the camera,
Yeah.
and or you would try to tape it, and like I say, like you wouldn't have half the show. You wouldn't, or somebody be standing and blocking it so that it would be worthless. And so many of those shows just evaporate into history. They don't even, like, they never even happened.
It's absolutely crazy too, because if you just fast forward 2 years into the future, on top of the on top of the crow's nest in the blue barn, there'd be 7 cameras during every single match.
Right.
I mean, there was so many more cameras up there, and it would be really bad. Like when we did program, everybody would be like, "Oh," everybody run up there trying to get a prime spot for their camera, and then
Right.
but it was just a world of difference between that and them, because I think pretty much a lot of the shows that I know that there wasn't very many shows at all after the 2013. I mean, they all got recorded. Like every single one of the shows would have something, recording with commentary, pretty much. I think they had one where they had one of the mics splitters was broken. They had to do commentary post, but that was about it. So it's just crazy how much difference it was back in the day compared to now.
Okay.
One of the people I want to talk about before we hop off here real quick, because I know you guys have talked about him a few times, but um, I remember, and this was one of the stories I want to tell real quick. I just remember that when Brett King first came into IWA Mid South at the Kmart building, we would always cheer him on. We liked him. We liked it. He came from Les Thatcher and him's group, and he just bumped crisper. He took a turnbuckle. You know what I'm saying? Everything he did with authority. And you could tell he was like in the gym trying to get bigger, and he looked more like a wrestler.
Right.
And then he ended up getting first 3 or 4 times we saw him. I mean, he was jobbing. He didn't get nothing in Harley,
Right.
but we liked him. And so he became Chip Fairway. And he would come out and give us a high five, and then like he'd leave later, be like, "See you later, guys," but we didn't know him or talk to him hardly at all. And then we're at Shakey's that night, the night in question with Terry Funk and Smothers, and it's like break time or whatever, and it's right before that match is going to happen, and I'm playing some kind of video game. I forget what it was. It was either some kind of video poker or race car or something. And Brent Blades is playing with me. And then from behind us comes up Brett King, who I don't even know. I mean, I don't know him hardly at all. I just knew him from the Kmart building. Of him, he called us the back nine because Ian called us the back row hecklers, and he called us the back nine because we was always cheering for him, even though he was a heel. And he puts his hands on our shoulders, like grabs us like Mr. Spock, And Brent's like, "Hey, what's up, buddy? How you doing?" And him and Brent carry on like a 5 minute conversation. And I'm just amazed looking next to him, like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And then when they walk away, and I'm like, "How do you know him, Brent?" I had no idea. It didn't even dawn on me that Brent had been refereeing. You know what I'm saying? And so he'd been in the locker room with Chip Fairway. But it was just funny because he's like, "You doing all right, big man?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "So you're the warlord, huh?" And I was like, "No." And Brent goes, "No, no, warlock, warlock."
Warlock.
Because it's Warlock. He goes, "Oh, okay, okay." And, he was really cool though. He wasn't joking with me or making fun of me. He's just. But I just remember afterwards going, "How do you know him? Fred, how do you know him? I know you. How come I
Right.
don't know him?" It was
Well,
so
yeah, you know Brent as your friend. You're not thinking
yeah. Oh, he
of
knows
the
somebody
side.
else.
You're also going to the other one. One of the other stories, you were the one that you know on the AMA episodes with tripping balls. He had me tell the Atomic Dog story, and we were
Oh,
trying to figure out where and when it happened, and about the only BBW result kind of thing that comes up on the cage match or whatever was a show at the Toy Tiger. And I told him, well, maybe I sort of remember going to the Toy Tiger once, so I was like, that could have been it. But then you immediately had reached out to me and was like, no, it was the Mutual Armory,
yep.
uh and that you were there. What can you tell us about that night to fill in the gaps of what I had wrong in my story?
The only thing that it wasn't, I wouldn't say wrong. It was just that the week before, it was the month before. I'm sorry. The when we ran there, it was uh, they had Corp and Jeremy had already jumped to BBW, and by this time, like Roland's there, Ian was there, and there's this total douchebag that works for Joe. That's a BBW. His name's Goose. You know what I'm talking about? The guy named Goose. He's almost like he thought he was a version of you, but he wasn't a version of you. He was like Joe was like, "Oh, he's helping us write storylines." And that's when they were like, "Well, what we're going to do is Isaiah had a match earlier that day or something with earlier in the card with Todd Morton, and he's like, "Well, let's go ahead and break his arm." And I remember Goose going, "I don't think we should be breaking guys' arms, guys." Like he was 100% serious. And I remember Ian and you were like, "Jesus fucking Christ, are you kidding me?" You know what I'm saying? Y'all were both just like crazy. But I remember Roland and Jeremy was out there with Atomic Dog. I don't know what all. I don't remember what all happened because I was getting me some stuff out of the concession stand, and I come back around and I see Roland just sitting in the concession stand from where he went to the back, and they said Dog started going off or whatever. And then I was like, okay. So I remember walking back there, and by the time I walk back there, I look and if I'm not mistaken, Ian's on the floor and there's a table like turned over. And then Dog looked like he's going for him. And as soon as he does, you're in between them and you and Dog are going at it. And you pop him like 3 or 4 times. He hits the ground and people start breaking it up. I think Tracy was there. Bull was there earlier with the creator, but they were like double booked. So Bull and creator Chris Hattler went somewhere else that night. But they were both there earlier that night, and Bull didn't even wrestle for BBW that night. But Tracy was there that when Tommy Dog you were fist fighting. And the sad thing was he said, I quit. And so you got up. And after he said that, he jumped up like he was going to do something. That's when Corporal got involved. And Corporal grabbed him and he bit Corporal and bit a chunk out of his arm. The atomic dog bit Corporal's arm. He had to get it like a band, gals bandaged up. It was nasty.
Probably
But
should have gotten a rabies shot if a dog bit him like that, you know?
I just remember though because I remember it looked like by the time I walked in, I missed whatever happened, like Ian falling out of the chair, getting knocked out of the chair, or whatever.
Well, I know, like, because Dog was like accusing him of trying to like take over the company, and he had accused Jeremy and Roland and me
Rolling,
of trying to steal his title, even though we put him over clean
yeah,
as a whistle in the middle of the ring.
yeah,
And I know he like flipped the table over that Ian was sitting behind, the, just the 6 foot rectangle, regular
yeah,
like banquet table
yeah,
that was in the locker room, and he flipped the table over and started to go after Ian, and that's when I jumped in.
yeah.
And
Because I
but
remember,
it was the Mutual National Guard Armory, so it was not the Toy Tiger show.
yeah,
Um,
the week before that, I had been. This is all around the same time, but me and Brent Blades and somebody else had went to a BBW show to hang out with JC and them because we were wrestling in the backyard with them by this time. And that's the other reason why we were there at the Mutual National Guard Armory and with BBW because we were doing the backyard shows with them. But the week before this, it was like I'm sorry, E Town, Kentucky, at the National Guard Armory. I want to say his name was Cowboy Bill Cartwright. I want to say, but Dog and him, he had said something smart to Dog, Atomic Dog, and then he come walking in. And from what I understand, I was already outside. I wasn't in the locker room. What I understand is that he had said something about catching Dog doing some stuff he shouldn't be doing in the bathroom drug wise. And he popped off and said that in the locker room. And from what I understand, that when I went back in there, I remember the ambulance was pulling this dude out. They said Dog stomped on his face.
yeah, I
Cowboy
know
Bill
that's.
Cartwright.
See, I knew when I told the story on the AMA, I knew that he had just like beaten the shit out of somebody in the locker, and I
Yeah.
thought it was a cowboy guy. So
Yep.
that sounds right. That it was like cowboy,
Something Cartwright, I
like
think.
something
Yeah.
Cart, or like Hoss Cartwright, or Bill, something that he
Yeah.
named himself. But it was like, yeah, some cowboy guy that was on the show, and Atomic Dog had like beat him senseless,
Oh, it was bad.
and so like everybody was scared to death of Atomic Dog. So when I
Especially Joe.
yeah, and so like Joe was like scared to death of me after that when I stood up to Dog and went with Dog. He was like, I can't believe it, because, and I think he had beaten somebody else up in their dressing room too, because I think there was like, I think that cowboy guy was the second guy that he had done that
Mhm.
to in
Yeah,
there
I know.
before we had crossed paths. And
Yeah, I know that there was two different atomic dogs though, because one of them I remember I was getting ready to go to the locker room with, and I thought, man, I hope it ain't this guy. Man, I hope it's this guy. And I looked, and it was just like a heavier set guy with like a singlet on, and it said like pound on his butt or something. But yeah, there was two different atomic dogs that wrestled for BBW too. So a lot of people didn't remember that. It's you have to figure this the stuff we're talking about, man. It's 25 years ago at
right,
least,
at
if not
least
longer.
almost, some of it almost 30.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
hard to believe that in freaking 6 months, IWA, it'd be the 30th anniversary of IWA if they were still running shows in, in October. Absolutely
That's,
insane to freaking think of that.
I don't even.
Um,
Yeah, I don't even. That's crazy when I think about it like that.
all right, Bry, we're getting to the wrap ups portion of the podcast here, so I'm just going to shoot you some names and let
Okay.
you talk about your, just give your thoughts, maybe quick story if you've got it,
Yeah,
about the
it's
individual, and we'll wrap up from there. All right.
cool.
So
And like some of these may be 30 years old, so don't be like, hold on, that's nothing
right,
like the guy I know. Well, that was 30 years ago, and maybe he changed.
right, exactly. So
Yes.
first, I'm going to start off with some of the USWA names that came through IWA Mid South that we got to see and know. Doug Gilbert.
Oh, uh, Doug Gilbert, the best story I have about him is he was a babyface. Dougie, Dougie, Dougie. At the Kmart building, he was a babyface until he had a match with Ian, and they were going at it. And after his match with Ian, he came walking past us, and I'll tell you, it was one of the people I hang out with. I'm not proud of this, but as Doug walks back, they look at him and go, "The wrong brother died." The wrong brother died, and they're like, "Fuck you, Dougie." And he's like trying to come through security to get him, of course, you know. And of course, this person that said this was 16 at the time, Nick the future. But I'm not going to tell you who did it. But after that, like within 2 weeks, Doug was a heel, and he stayed a heel the rest of almost this whole time in IWA Mid South. And I always say Nathan Future's 16-year-old ass helped turn Dougie heel. So
Well, and that was a good thing because at that point, then my gang, we were more than capable of then turning our chairs around and reading the
oh yeah.
newspaper and really giving Doug shit at that point because we did not like Doug at all.
Oh
Did
no,
not
man. I
like Doug
remember.
at all. So I would not wishing death upon Doug because he ain't that bad,
No, I know. Yeah, but
kind of
yeah,
thing.
he's a
But but
teenager. I mean,
but
that's
yeah,
him.
it
Yeah.
if you were to like come to me and say, would you rather Doug Gilbert or Eddie Gilbert be the one that's dead? I would much rather have Eddie Gilbert still around and have
How do
those
you
years
get to
of
answer that question and remain good still? You know what I'm saying? He just found a way to answer the question and still make it okay. It's
yeah.
like,
Well,
yeah, if I had to answer that question, I'd much rather see. I was a huge fan. Eddie Gilbert, man, when him and Tommy Rich were the new Fabs, that's
yeah.
when I was getting to go to the Gardens every Tuesday, for like early teen years. And so I always did love Eddie Gilbert. And I remember when Mance Warner was 10 months in the business, 10 months in, and he came out with Billy the P, and he was talking. I had to talk for 8 minutes to people before he even got in the ring. That's how much heat the guy had, you know? I told Ian, I said, dude, he reminds me of a young Eddie Gilbert. And he is like, fucking blasphemy. That's blasphemy. And he was only 10 months in the business at the time, but I stand by it, man. For Mance Warner, I stand by it. I'm sorry, I'll let you go ahead.
Okay. Well, we you just mentioned him, Tommy Rich.
Oh, to Tommy Rich, I remember seeing Tommy Rich and Ricky Morton in a first blood match towards like the end of ECW. And I remember seeing that, and they were both blonde hair, of course. So they're covered with juice. They were covered with blood, beating the hell out of each other. And I was like, this is fantastic. And then, like 2 weeks later, I show up at IWA Mid South, and it's Tommy Rich versus Ricky Morton, and they do the exact same thing, and they bleed all over the place in the Kmart building. And I am screaming. My friends are like, "Do you like them?" I was like, "I grew up on those dudes, man. That's the
Yep.
youngest NWA World Heavyweight Champion ever. That's
Yep.
what some people consider the greatest baby face of a tag team of all time. You know."
Yep.
But that's I like Tommy Rich, and now I do remember Tommy Rich like I don't know if he was inebriated or getting ready to be inebriated, but I remember one time at the Kmart building, man, he almost caused a riot. There was people, somebody came over the rail after him. I just remember Tommy jacking him like 3 times right in the face. And then everybody started separating him and they got him out. But yeah, there was a big Tommy went over the rail after somebody. I don't know what they spit on him or said something to him, but yeah, he was always really nice though, every time I ever talked to him.
Yeah, he was my favorite growing up, and I'll answer. Odds are he was already inebriated because
Yeah.
when Tommy Rich would bleed at an IWA show, you could smell the alcohol.
Oh, fuck yeah. Yeah.
When he was bleeding,
Yeah,
you're like, oh my god.
Him and Ricky had the most blood, had the most juice of anything I've seen of any of Tommy Rich's matches he had there. I mean, that's the one I remember him having the most. They were both covered in the middle of the ring, doing the trade off punch thing, and blood's flying. It was like I saw this on ECW TV, and now I'm seeing it live. That's
Yeah.
the way I felt. I mean, I'd say I was maybe 22, 23 years old at the time. So,
Tracy Smothers.
oh my dude, people that didn't get to know Tracy, I think they don't understand at all what they missed. What they missed, and not just a man, not just a wrestler. I mean, the guy could play face or heel. I just want to hear him talk. I don't even care if he wrestles. I mean, that's the one outstanding moment. Besides that, my friends, when Rick Brady took over for D1W, he he did book a lot of my friends. He booked Quinn. He booked Isaiah. He wrestled. He got made sure some of those guys got some paydays and got some good spots. But he did treat Tracy Smothers super well in D1W. Now seeing him out of BA is a totally different thing because I remember his musical play, and me and my friends would stretch our fingers like this because we was getting ready to middle finger his ass as soon as he walks out the door. We're gonna be like middle fingers in the air towards Tracy because Tracy gonna do the same thing to us.
Yep.
And as I grew later, and he saw me bringing my kids to the show or whatever, and he remembered me from back in the day, my one biggest best memory of Tracy was a strong style tournament 2003, the one that BJ Whitmer won, where Smothers did it with his bare feet, and it was at the Colgate building, and me and Jay Prodigy showed up there as fans just to watch it with a couple of guys I used to work with, and we sit and watched that, and Smothers took on Hero, and Smothers wrestled with no shoes on and was doing 619s and everything else. But when I first walked in the door, I didn't even know anything about that building. So I walked in with Tracy Smothers. And Patty's waving like, nope, you gotta come here and pay, and she's waving at us. And he's like, I'll talk to you in a minute, little Wody. And Tracy Smothers, so I'll talk to you in a little minute. And I remember afterwards, after his and Heroes match, he came out to, do his sales march, a little march, or whatever he had there that day. And I started talking to him. He's like, how you been? It's been a little while. I was like, yeah, man, I ain't been to a WA show in a year and a half. He's like, really? He's like, yeah. And the fact that probably some of the people that run the show didn't know or didn't care, but Tracy noticed and knew. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That made me feel good. I've never heard anyone. The only thing I can say is that I heard somebody say one time, oh, well, Tracy Smothers uses racial slurs. I'm like, okay, next, what else? I mean, that's why you don't want to support him or why you don't believe all the people that said he was such a great human being, and that's fine too. I'm not one to tell you how to feel, but that's the only negative thing. Think about it. All these people that's been in these locker rooms with them, I see people walk around with shirts, daughter of Smothers or son of Smothers or
Right.
kid of Smothers, like you used to see the ones that say like uh Heyman guy. You'll see now it says a
Right.
Smothers guy. And I like to see that for Jersey.
Yeah. Now we'll move on to some of the IWA OGs. So Pondo.
Madman Pondo, I've never had a problem with entirely ever since I've known him in 1996. Um, he's actually put a lot of money in my pocket, man. When he did like the girl fight wrestling, he hired me to do commentary for that. There's been other things like he had his hand in where like at the arena he would run the show or whatever. He'd be in charge of part of the show, like with him and gosh, what's the guy's name? Terry Harper when they ran their shows there together. And he put me and Maniwa and not Brian Red, but the other Brian guy, all of us on commentary, gave us envelope every week. I mean, every time we did a show for him, I've never had a problem out of Pondo ever. The thing I don't like about Pondo is he doesn't take the credit that he deserves. Now I know Ian and Axel were the ones to bring the Japanese death match style to America with the Taipei death match and things like that. But what people don't know is that Four Corners of Pain is 99% Pondo. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Hit 99% Pondo. So that's the reason why I've went Pondo every time he like sends a thing out like I'm doing stand-up comedy. I'm like, all right, I'll be there. I go just because I like to laugh, man. I think Pondo is I don't think there's no IW Mid South without Pondo.
Yeah. Oh, that's a fair statement right there. He
Yeah, a
he
lot of people
was
don't like that, but
he
I
was
agree
he
with
was
that.
one of the pillars. He was definitely
Yes.
one of the pillars that started it all.
Yep.
Um, anything else to add about Ox? We've talked some Ox Harley on here, but you
Well,
got
like I
anything to
said,
add on him?
just the fact that he could wrestle way better than people think he could, for one. For two, I think it's the fact that Ox is a Kentucky born, Kentucky bred wrestler. I mean, he may wrestle in Tennessee, other places, whatever, but he has that um mentality where like like every time I've ever heard of him getting in any kind of shoot or any kind of whatever, poor guy always loses.
Right? Yeah, yeah, he lost every one of them
He loses them. It makes you feel bad
in dramatic
because
fact, like not even close, just an
yeah,
ass whooping every time.
yeah, it's like, and you feel bad. You feel bad for the guy, but then at the same time, you're like, you know, he was such a better mat wrestler than people think he was, or however you want to even put it. He wasn't just a deathmatch guy. And a lot of people think that because of Ida Mid South and they saw him there, that's all Ox was. And that's not true. And I don't think it's a fair thing for people to say about him because he's way more than that. So
A name that might not ever get mentioned again on the podcast. Uh, Folks may not know him, but he was definitely one of the originals, Gator McAllister.
oh yeah, I threw that up there just because Gator, I mean, for the heel work that he was doing, especially against like when they had Gator and somebody worked the War Machines. I don't know if you know this, like 2 or 3 months in a row almost. It seemed like every time you went to the Kmart building, it was Gator McAllister and Tornado Taz or Gator McAllister and somebody else. And it was always against like the War Machines. And they always got their ass kicked. I mean, it was almost like Gator, and then finally he got like a mid card push or something at the Kmart building, and I was like, we just watched this guy lose like for 6 months in a row, and now we're supposed to believe that he's instantly got so much better that he's going over on these guys. But yeah, I remember enjoying Gator, and a lot of people didn't. A lot of people were like, oh, he's too USWA, too not as new age, I guess you would say, as they wanted him to be.
Okay, now here's one I've mentioned before on the podcast, but probably not going to get mentioned a whole lot more. Hard Rockin' Danny D.
Oh, Hard Rock and Dandy is probably one of the best jobbers to ever enter an IWA Mid South. Dude, the shit that he would take when he would get jobbed out. I remember, do you remember seeing Ian Axel hit him with the SST, Sudden Skull Trauma? He hit Danny D, and it looked. He did fine later. He was fine, but when he first looked like it looked like Axel dropped him right on top of his fucking head. I thought he was dead. I
Yeah,
thought there was
every match you would think that he was about to and then like just everybody in the locker room would come out and pick him up over their head and they would see how far they could throw him out of the ring into the crowd and the crowd wouldn't try to catch him.
Oh hell no! I moved out of the way many a times. I ain't catching Danny D. Yeah. Oh, it was so fun. It was so fun, and you know what? He seemed like he was having a good time with it too. But I think that he have. You want to talk about best job guys that work for IWA Mid South? I think you got to throw him in there.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Bull Payne.
Bull Payne was the flip side to Tracy Smothers to me when it came to the hills of IWA Mid South, because Tracy Smothers come out and he got the crowd riled up. He may dance or whatever too, but at the same time he's flipping you off and he's telling you, if I hear Tracy one more time, everybody dies. Everybody knows the Tracy Smothers but Bull, I remember Nathan Future being 15. I'm standing next to him, and I take 2 steps away because Bull comes out and he's breathing fire. He's already spit a snot rocket on somebody. He's already fired away a loogie at somebody. And so he's standing next to him, and all the chairs are like on the ground. And he looks over at Nathan Future, and Nathan Future just stands there. And I'm like, oh, you poor, dumb bastard. And as soon as he does, Bull just takes one arm. It looks like something out of an anime show and just shoves him. Just one arm, like shoves him. And he hits Nick in his shoulder and he flies sideways into the chairs on the floor. And then Bull heads towards the ring. And I'm still like 6 feet away from him. I'm not going nowhere near him.
Yep.
He made you scared. You were
Scared
scared.
shitless.
He made you scared he was going to hit you with something. He played on your fears. Where Tracy came out as a heel, he was an entertaining heel, and yes, he did good heel work. Like he wouldn't come out and talk shit to the fans and pull away from the match. Chasey knew better. You know what I'm saying? He got his heat from the match like you're supposed to, and that was that. So Bull Payne always to me, he seemed like, and also I also heard all this. I don't know if it's true, but someone told me that when Ian first came to start IWA Mid South, the Bull was supposed to be like one of his partners. He was supposed to like help him train people, help him bring other people in to wrestle for IWA Mid South. That like he like they lived together or something when he first came here. That when he first moved here, that it was supposed to be Ian and Bull together with IWA Mid South because Bull was around for a long time. I mean, he may disappear for a while, but he come back around. I don't know if that's the truth or not. I don't want to state it as the truth, as that Ian wanted I to be a Mid South and wanted Bull to be a big part of that. But that was my understanding from what I heard back in the day.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that part. I do know that when I just had Bull on, he talked about when Ian and Axel were in Memphis, they all like he would let them stay at his house.
Yeah.
Uh kind of so like they were like living together, I guess you could say,
Mhm.
for like in Memphis. I don't know about in Louisville. Or if he was going to be a big part of it, but I mean Bull was a major he was a major player among the wrestlers on those early shows for sure, and scared the hell out of everybody. And we were talking off air. I don't know if you want to talk on air about, like, we heard the story of Chip Fairway and Bull
Oh
Payne.
yeah, yeah. I don't mind. I heard that it didn't happen at IWA, but like you said, I remember them saying something about they had a match or a tag match or something in him, but they came back in. Bull had said something to Chip, and about he didn't like the way that something had happened outside or whatever, and Chip was like, "Well, I don't either," and they almost like got into a fist fight in the locker room, and a
Yeah,
lot
I
of people
think that
didn't
was
even know about it.
HWA. I think that was in
Yeah,
Cincinnati.
I think it was too.
But like, yeah, Chip was one of the ones that like did not back down from Bull. I would have, if Bull would have came to
Oh,
me and said I got a problem, I'd have shit myself and died right on the spot. But like, okay, I'm done.
yeah,
But
just when, like I said, just when my buddy was sitting there standing there and Bull just came out to go to a match, I already knew he was mad. I seen him honk a loogie. I was already out of the way. I was not. I ain't standing up to Bull.
nope,
No.
not at all.
But Chip Fairway, yeah, Chip had such good matches with Bull and IWA Mid South too. And then once people saw that he was gonna take a bump on on the concrete just like he would in the ring, which is what Chip did all the time. I was like, oh my god. Once he started that, then it wasn't too long till he had the IWA strap. And then him and Kid had a few good matches here and there. And then I don't know why. I think it's because I don't remember seeing Chip Fairway. Did he wrestle at the Blue Barn hardly at all? I don't think he did.
not as much as he should have. Like
Yeah, I think he came
he
in for a few big shows here and there, but
right.
it wasn't like Total Eclipse Teen Club or um, at Kmart building because I do remember him showing up at the Total Eclipse Teen Club and he wrestled Tarek. And I remember just thinking, I've been waiting to see this one. You know what I'm saying? I've been waiting to see
Right.
this one. Chip Fairway against Tarek. And it was a really good match, too. But yeah, I remember that. But I don't remember him like at the Colgate building. I don't remember him showing up much
Yeah,
there.
yeah, not he
I
may
think
not
Chip,
have, maybe once or twice there, but yeah,
yeah.
he didn't really, after Smart Market showed up and would have been able to skyrocket his career for whatever
Yeah.
reason, he just
He went
wasn't around much.
he went into the coaching too. He started coaching a lot too, I think, at that time too. So
Harry Palmer.
Harry the Bay Magna Palmer. Now, the reason I like this guy so much is because right when he was finished his training with Ian and was becoming a ref and was starting to get ready to wrestle, that's when we first started running the ring. All about that same time because Cash was the first guy that, Ian and Harry was the second. And then it was Mitch and Jeremy at the same time. But yeah, I remember, and Harry would always come in and teach us and talk to us about if he saw us in the ring acting goofy and doing things that were just wrong, like you should never ever do those in a match. He would tell us, he wasn't scared. He would tell us, he'd be like, you got to make it make sense. And Not just that, but even like years later, I mean, it's just Harry was never one of the guys I ever heard anybody have any kind of issue. You know what I'm saying? I've never heard anybody say, "Oh man, I hated that Harry the Palmer guy. He was such a jerk." Or, you always hear something bad about somebody. I don't care who you are, but I always heard good things about Harry.
Yeah, I love Harry. He helped get me on at UPS when I needed a part-time job to pay some bills when I got out of first graduated and moved over to Louisville and was
Yeah.
staying in the double wide trailer with Ian and that. Like I needed to be able to get out and make a little bit of money or whatever. And Harry got me on at UPS and I was able to get my own place and everything. So love Harry. Hopefully one day we'll get him onto this podcast. He's very, very busy. He's got to work two jobs now. He's got some stuff going on and he's still trying to recover from the loss of Mark, and
Oh,
knows that if he comes onto the podcast, it's going to be a lot of what we talk about. And so
yeah.
he's not quite mentally there yet to where he's able to do that. But one day we're hopefully get Harry on here and just have some real fun stories to tell. Mitch
Oh, yeah.
Page.
Mitch Page. Um, Man, I think that that is probably one of the funniest human beings that I've ever met in my entire life. For one, um, for two, and this is something that I've always wanted to say that people sometimes don't give Mitch enough credit. I was glad that him and Roland got to go to the Hall of Fame. I really am. But as far as his deathmatch stuff, I mean, before IWA started running again in 2013, Maniwa, Bentley, a couple other people, Cage Cutler, a couple other people, like that's a kid that used to go to IWA back in the day. They ran a company called I think EWE or EWP or something. And they even had a couple of shows before IWA Mid South had shows at the uh Frog over in Indiana behind the strip club. They before that they had it at this company had it and they had a couple of death matches and one of them the semi-main event was Matt Tremont versus Mitch Page circa probably 2012 2013 and people always talk about the VCR coming out of the ring, hitting Necro on the head from Toby Gline.
Yeah.
Matt Tremont was battering. I mean, battering, hitting, swinging that VCR like he would swing books right at the top of Mitch's head for like 3 minutes during that match. And afterwards, I talked to Mitch and everything, and I was like, man, I wish I'd have rather seen you guys go in the finals because Mitch did the flying uh, fiery elbow on the outside of the ring to, and he missed Tremont, and that's how Tremont went over. I said, I'd much rather seen you guys in the finals. He's like, yeah, but you know, in order for me to take on Tremont, it's worth it. He goes because he's one of the guys that I hadn't got to wrestle that I wanted to. And so I thought that was really cool. And he's been in so many things that people don't give him credit for. Like you always hear about the clock incident, but they don't understand that guy's been in Japan.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He did death matches in Japan. And so when I hear him on your podcast going, I'm the worst there is, the worst there ever, like far from it, bro. Far from it. He
Yep.
has a mind for wrestling that some people won't even don't even understand.
Right.
And he told me himself, and I didn't know what was being said. At third base, I don't know the year, but it's where cash flow, it's not on tape. I guarantee you that.
Yeah, it's not on tape.
Cash flow came
It had to have been 98.
98. Yep, he came up from, I'd say it had to be at least 30 feet from where Cash jumped to the ring, at least. But as he's going up these steps to make this jump, there's this inebriated asshole coming up after him. And I'm like probably 8, 10 feet away from the thing. And I see you, and I don't think you and Mitch were like super tight until then, but I'm not sure. I know you knew each other, y'all were cool, but I think this is one of the things that made you guys like, you know.
Yeah.
Mitch told me, he's like, I see this
Yeah,
guy
because I
coming
think
up.
it was before, it had to have been before, it was before April of 98, because it was before. It's like me and Mitch were just, security, whatever. We
Yeah,
weren't, so it was before April of 98
yeah.
at this bar.
And I remember they're coming up the steps. So this guy's coming up the steps, and Mitch told me, he said he looked at you, and he goes, "I'm just gonna ask you, high or low, because we're gonna have to take him out." You know what I'm saying? And I don't know, remember which you went high or he went low or which one, but he
I
said
think I went low
whichever.
and he went high.
He told me, he said, as soon as we hit him, he said, from that moment on, that man has been my friend. He'll be my friend until the day I die. He goes, not just because of that moment, just because of what we created in that moment. I knew I would have his back and he would have mine. And that's what Mitch told. I mean, he told me that. And I remember him telling me that about, and I remember watching it happen as it happened, because as soon as y'all put him down, then Cash came off the top all the way to the ring. And I mean,
Yeah,
like
and
I
it
said,
had to have been 30 feet, because
oh, it was
it was
far.
the third story balcony, and each story is 10 feet. So
Yeah.
to be on the third story, he's 30 feet in the air, and then Cash is over 6 foot tall, and he jumps up and out. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, he probably was a good 35 feet in the air,
Oh,
when he was at his apex, and then on his way down into the, and Ian was so pissed that he, not not pissed that he did it,
hmm.
not pissed that pissed that he did it when there was no camera to record it.
How
It
is that
like
his fault?
cussed him a blue streak after that. Like,
That's
don't
so
you
funny.
ever do something like that when we're not. Tell me when you're going to do something like that so I know to record it. And it's like, your dumb
Yeah.
ass should be recorded. Everything we done should have been recorded. It shouldn't have
Yeah.
been a, hey, I'm going to do this crazy spot. Make sure you're running tape. Like that should have just been a given that you're running tape. And every show had crazy shit on it, so
Oh,
everything
yeah.
should have been taped. But yeah, he was so mad at Cash Flow that night. You'd have thought that Cash had committed a major crime by giving like one of the most amazing things that I've ever seen in my life,
Oh,
coming off that
yeah.
third balcony and landing perfectly with an Alabama. I don't know how he didn't break the ring when he
I don't know how he
landed.
didn't break his ass,
Yeah,
because that was so far. But I'm so happy for that guy. I went and he wrestled for Rick and D1W for a little while. He came back and wrestled a show even at Jammers for IWA. And he did the oh shit leg jump off the top rope onto a bunch of chairs out in the middle of the damn row. But I'm so happy for him and Tulsa King, man. I hope the world for
couldn't
him.
happen to a better guy.
Oh yeah, I hope that when Nick gets done with this, he gets his own show. Shit.
Right. And knock on, like, I just talked to him for a few seconds the other day,
Yeah,
and he's still telling me that he's going to come on here at some point when he's
he
got
will.
time. Um so I keep reaching out everyone, and like, I'm like, I know you're a busy man, but I would love to be able to tell some stories with you. So I'm looking forward to getting Cash on here one of these days. Great guy, deserves every work, busted his ass for ever to
Oh
get
yeah.
this opportunity. So I'm so happy that he's got it.
I like that he worked the different areas too. Like after he got done with, he did his thing in IWM itself, but then he went and did OVW, and he went and did, he even tried to open his own little thing in Shepherdsville for a while with him and another couple guys, and they ran his shows for a while. So, you know, Cash has always been, he was one of the ones that was like Roland. If I had to pick two of them, but besides Ian, of course, just because Ian was always like, "Hey, you guys want to go eat? You want to go to go car country? You want to go do this?" I don't want to say he was grooming us, but he kind of was. He was grooming us to bleed for him. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, it was. We always have fun though. I mean, we always have fun. But Roland was the first one to really give a shit about any of the backyard kids or whatever, about any of us or Lock family or any of that. And then we had the pro am there, man. There was like half the IWA guys was like, "Oh man, you look like you're having so much fun." I'm like, "Well, we are." And that's what makes us different, though. We don't have to put up with all the other shit. We were paying to do this.
Right.
But yeah,
So let's a
got
few
a
more
couple
words
names
about
left.
Roland. Yeah, we got some names. Roland.
Oh. like I said, he's the first guy that gave a crap about us. And this is my Roland story that I told his son after, oh, shoot, probably about 3 years ago when he showed up at one of the shows at the arena. And somebody goes, "That's Justice over there." And I was like, "Roland's son?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh, okay." And I went and told him, I was like, "This is the kind of man your dad was, in case you ever wonder. Is he was in the Tough Man contest here in Louisville. Probably, I want to say it had to be somewhere between 97 and 99. And he tells me and Jeremy both, "Hey man, I'm gonna go. I'm be at the I'm fighting in the Tough Man contest. It's at Louisville Gardens." We're like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." So we show up, and Roland comes down there and buys both our tickets to get in. And I'm like, "You're fighting, man. What do you mean? Why are you buying my ticket?" He goes, "Because I invited you here." And I was like, "No, I buy my own ticket. I'm a grown man. I don't need, you know." He said, "No, I invited you here, so I'm buying your tickets." And I was like, "All right, man, that's cool." So I sit there and watched him, and I watched him in the thing, and the first thing he did after he got out of the ring, he lost to the guy who went on to win. So and he the first thing he did, he got out of the ring, he went to the back, and before he even got all the way to the back, it seems like he took a side route. It came over to where me and Jeremy was sitting and was like, "I got blown up." I got blown up. He goes, "I had him that first round." I was like, "You did, man. You rocked him a couple times." But it's just the way he was like he in his mind, he invited us to see him in the Tough Man contest. So it wasn't like, it ain't like where it was $15 to get in, $10 to get in. It was like $25 to get in a Tough Man contest. And he came and paid for us both. And that's just the kind of guy he was.
Yeah. Mark Wolf.
You're gonna make me cry, man. The one story I always had with Mark was how loyal he was the night Richard X got burnt. Um I was out there and I was at the ringside, and that was the second week we were out back. The ring and all that was out back of the Blue Barn. I was told that where the tables are gonna go here. Have here's a jug of water. If you see something, whatever, don't be afraid to grab it and throw it on them. Blah blah blah. So they go to try to set the first table on fire, and they squirt this charcoal lighter fluid all over this fucker, and it don't go up. And so Ian's hollering for paper. And he gets like some paper towels, lights it, goes up. Okay. Isaiah goes to the first one. He gets lucky as shit, rolls around, puts himself out, think he got a little burn on his arm or whatever. Richard X not so lucky. Um, I mean, I saw the bad burn on his arm because like as soon as he hit outside the ring, I was the one throwing water on him. And I was the one that carried him to the back. And I remember being mad outside and talking to Prazak for a minute. Only one of two times I ever spoke to CM Punk in my entire life was that night and another night. Everybody's always like, "Oh, I knew him so well. Me and him were friends." I talked to him twice. That's it. But when I got to the hospital, we couldn't get in to see him because you only have two people, and of course Richard's parents and stuff was there. And Mark Wolf was like, I was mad. I mean, I ain't gonna lie, I was mad. I was like, Ian Rod's supposed to be the king of hardcore. Why would he use charcoal lighter fluid on a wooden press table? He knows it's not gonna go off when it gets hit. And I was so mad. And Mark was like, "Hey, don't be mad at Ian. Ian didn't get it. I bought the charcoal lighter fluid. It was me. I'm the one that bought it. Don't be mad at him." And I was like, "Yeah, but you're not the one that was out there lighting it once you saw it wouldn't light. You're not the one that made sure you had your fiery tables. You know what I'm saying?" He's like,
Right.
"Yeah, but I should have known better." He goes, he trusted me to go do it. And I got the wrong one. And he said, "I'm going to wait here till I go see Richard and tell him, that I got the wrong fluid." And I was like, "Dude, I'm not going to blame you. It's not your fault." You know what I'm saying? They should have known, that you use butane lighter fluid. But that's the story I always remember about Marky is that he always, and then when I had the hard problem with Prodigy and all the stuff happened and basically ended up getting Julius Caesared out of that. And I told him, I said, that's fine. Just make sure you take Prodigy off the name of it and you can do whatever you want with it. But Mark hit me up via Facebook right after that happened and was like, there's going to be people like that no matter what you do when it comes to wrestling. He said, there's going to be good people and bad people. The main thing is to just know that you did something to honor your friend, and not a lot of people do that, you know? And that made me feel real good because me and him weren't super, super tight or real super close. And, and I text him back and forth, every now and then on Facebook Marketplace and stuff. Not Marketplace, but on Messenger and stuff. And man, I feel like I think he was a way better wrestler than anyone gives him credit for. I know,
Absolutely.
I know that sounds terrible, but I think he was a way better wrestler. I think that one person that knows that besides us is Chris Hero. I think Chris Hero knows it too.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, I think he was way better, especially when it come to the brass tacks, the stuff that counts, the stuff that, you know, most people don't pay attention to. The small things, the little things. I think that's the thing that made Mark shine. I really do.
Oh yeah. He was the ultimate baby face and held the locker room together with, you said Mitch was probably like the funniest. Mark was right there with him, probably his second funniest, maybe 1A,
Oh,
1B. And
yeah.
they would keep the locker room tolerable when all the bullshit would be happening. So
Means a lot, man.
we're going to talk about a few fans before we finish up with the Lock family. So I'm just going to let you just say something quick, like just go through and name some of the fans that you know were at
Well,
all the IWA shows with you that we've.
yeah, we talked earlier about Vic Von Erich, who big Vic Philpott, man. He was there the night that Jeremy came out, and surprised us all and made his debut. And that seems crazy that was what, 97 maybe, 98,
Early 98, I think.
early 98. Yeah. So, I mean, the fact that, he was there and he remembered everything and he was always a big, huge friend and a fan of Jeremy's and fan of the Lock family, come to the Pro-Am shows and watch us and stuff. Um, Everybody knows about Donna and Charlie. Everybody knows about those. The I think maybe because they was around so long through so many different time periods too. Because after Richard got burnt, I mean, like Brent said, I wasn't at the Colgate building for the 2003 2004 era. Before probably 2003 because they left before 2004. But I wasn't there for a lot of those shows. I mean, I wasn't there every week like I sure was, at Kmart and all the different ones, the blue building and everything else.
Right.
Um, but a lot of the fans, you grow to where you walk in and you're like, it's almost like Norm from Cheers. You know,
Right.
you're like, hey, what's up? How you been doing, man? Like, yeah, but there was Abby and Bess, and I think now it's Molly, which is Bess's daughter. I think she started going to a lot of them, and then Abby, Miss Abby, everybody knows who she is, but Miss Donna and old man Charlie. I remember they used to get so mad if you sat in old man Charlie's seat, but he had been around so long, like since the Kmart days. And then
Mm-hmm.
the guy, he always wore the Vietnam hat. His name, they called him Old Man Richard. They called him a bunch of stuff, but they called him Old Man Richard. And he would always talk to my son, be like, "Hey, how you doing, little man? What's up? How you doing?" He always talked to my boys and stuff. He was always real cool. It's just and Taxi Cab James, man, you could not argue with that man because he wouldn't let you get the last 2 cents in. And DJ Donnie, I mean, when we were doing pro-ams, DJ Donnie was out there showing us how to catch somebody on a dive. And Ian was like, don't let him fool you. He'd be a good jobber. That'd be about it. But I don't think I ever saw Donnie wrestle a match. I don't think I
I
ever
don't
did.
think I ever did.
I seen him run the ropes and do some things inside the ring, but I didn't ever see him wrestle a whole match. But yeah, like the fans, man, it's just I just wanted people to know that there's IWA had for all the strong wrestlers they had and the ones that went through there and the ones that, to this day you may still be seeing. The reason they were there is because they had such a strong fan base, man. You have people that spend half their life going to the same wrestling promotion. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
it's not WWE or WWF.
yeah. We had some loyal, couldn't have lasted as long as we did without them.
Yeah.
Some great fans. We're going to finish this up by letting you talk about the Locke family, guys. Just say something little bit about everybody and finish up with. I know you want to pay tribute to Jay Prodigy, so
Yeah, that was a lot of people don't know who that is. He started out as a back doors lock in the backyard, lock family. He's my best friend since I was 6 years old. And we used to wrestle in the backyard and it all because of Bone, Thugs in Harmony. That we'll be the Lock family. He'll be Combo Lock. He'll be Padlock. He'll be, So that's how that started. And we just found out one day, probably about 6 months, maybe 5, 6 months into renting a ring. I mean, into IWA being the Kmart building, that we could rent the ring and we could have actual wrestling matches in a ring instead of in a homemade trampoline style backyard type ring. And that was all she wrote for it. We hit the ground running from there. I mean, we half the guys that wrestled in the backyard didn't make the transition into the ring. They didn't, they thought it was gonna be like bumping on a trampoline. They didn't realize, that it was a little bit different what they thought. But lots of guys from the Lock family, like Nathan Future, he wrestled out of Mid South. Richard X out of Mid South. Brent Blades, he ran the locker room, I think, for Ian a few times even. And I know he was referee for many a year. Same way with Chris Class, same way with Richard X, and then Richard X did wrestle. Um, the thing about Lock Family that made us a little bit different, though, was that lots of us were about the same age as the youngest crowd of guys that was out of Mid South Wrestling at the time. And it was just a like a coincidence almost, but I don't really believe in coincidence. But still, it's almost what it was because you know you have to figure, like you said, you're getting ready to be 50 next year,
yep.
and I think
Well, this
Ian,
year,
oh, this year, and
yep.
Ian's 54, 55. So I think if I'm not mistaken, you're right about the same age as. I think you may got like a year or two on Jay Prodigy, and that's it. And,
Nothing. Jay Prodigy was older than me. I couldn't believe it.
was he? Okay,
Yeah, yeah, he was
yeah.
slightly older than me.
Yeah, he will be. His birthday's in March, so. But yeah, he started out as BDL, and that's what who he was when he very first debuted against Suicide Kid at the Total Eclipse Scene Club. It was BDL. He wasn't Jay Prodigy then,
Right.
and then he went and switched his name to Trey Down when IWA didn't have a place to run, and Corporal and him went to a backyard show where we were wrestling with JC and them, and they ended up talking to Joe, and so Corp, and he decided to change his name to Trey Down, and they went to BBW for a while, and of course, as soon as Ian got a place to come, all them dudes that went to BBW to wrestle, every single one of them, just about that Ian would take back, all came back to IWA, and that's when Jay Prodigy was born, and he is sadly passed away right a little bit before his 30th birthday. He would die on leap year too, by the way. What kind of person dies on February 29th?
Well,
Only
yeah.
him, you know. But yeah, it's so I've always tried to keep his name alive. I do know that I was told by Ian that um one of the main things, Jeremy loved wrestling, but he didn't like being in a locker room. But he loved wrestling certain people. Like whenever he would get there, they'd be like, "Oh, you're wrestling this guy and this guy." He would tell me later, he'd be like, "I didn't even want to wrestle them," because he was so used to wrestling in the backyard where you wrestled your friends. And
Right.
that's so stupid because you don't get to pick and choose who you wrestle in the professional wrestling business.
Right. But not if
Jeez.
you want. Not if you want to be on a lot of shows. Yeah.
Exactly. But at the same time, I mean, it was just Reckless Youth was the guy. At that time, he was the guy. This is the tape trading king. He was. You're not talking Japan. This is everybody wanted tapes of him, and everybody wanted the little match clips. Has like 10 match clips with four tuned to music and shows all his fancy moves. I mean, everybody loved Reckless Youth, and then just so happens he was on the very first show in the Kmart building, and I had no idea. I had no idea until like a year later that he was there. And so he's like, "Yeah, he's coming back in." I'm like, "He is?" He's like, "Yeah, he's wrestling kickboxer." I'm like, "Okay, that's good. That should be like, that's a potential to be really, really good." You know what I'm saying? And I remember that's the first time I got to see Reckless Youth live was when he wrestled kickboxer during the Dennis Carluzzo thing,
Right.
and that was at the Kmart building. Well, then once Ian was looking for other places to wrestle at the time, one of those places was a town called Olytic, Indiana.
Yep.
And
How you find Olytic, Indiana, I have no idea because that's out in the middle of nowhere.
oh yeah, and it was I want to say it was either like a high school gymnasium or something. It was hot as balls in that gymnasium. It was so hot, you sweating like crazy. But they had Suicide Kid versus J Prodigy versus Reckless Youth. And I remember I rode with him there, everything. He's like, "You doing all right?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm good." We got out. He could not make it from the car. He was trying to hurry up, Jeremy was, to walk in, and he puked before he even made it into the into like an hour before the matches were to start. He couldn't even make it into the building where he puked. He got so nervous having to wrestle Reckless. And then Kid told me he threw up two more times in the bathroom before the match started. And if you know Jeremy at all, that's so much not like him. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't
Yeah,
seem like the guy that.
he always had like that air of arrogance about him of like
Yeah,
knowing that he was good and knowing that he had the talent to do it. And so it's shocking, yeah, that he was,
yeah,
but you know, Reckless Youth had such a aura about him and such like you said, he was the man.
yeah. He
He
had
was
it.
the
Yeah.
man at that
Hmm.
point. And I think like he was the indie darling. He was what everybody wanted him on the shows.
Oh
So
yeah.
it was a big deal getting to wrestle him. So
That's what Ian told me later. He's like, as much as he goes, as much as I like bringing a Reckless in or whatever. He goes, you know, that's one of the main reasons Jeremy wanted to even wrestle is because he wanted to wrestle Reckless. After that, he was kind of done, and I was like, after that, if you remember, while during the Olytic time, that's when IWA hardly ever had a home. You know what I'm saying? It
yep,
may be like Olytic, and then another time it'd be like some weird, shitty other place, bumfuck Indiana.
right.
and and it's nothing against. I ain't shitting on staff at the time or anything. It's just they couldn't find a spot. But when they did find a spot, and they had was able to run there and able to do good things, which I've seen many times over my lifetime. Once the IWA got that crowd, get, you know, got their regulars, their base up to where these guys come and wrestle for him, and he knows who he has coming in to wrestle for him. Man, there was many a times where I'm like, man, I feel so lucky to be able to have this twice in my lifetime. That I
Yep.
got to see this live, and then my kids got to see it live too. And so, when people talk shit about it itself, it's like, not a lot of people had that same kind of love for it like me and you did. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They did, not to where we done the things that we did or crossed our fingers the way we did. But man, the IWA Mid South helped treat me and my friends and the Lock family and the Pro Am kids and all those names in one way or another that we just said. We wouldn't know them if it wasn't for that. We wouldn't. So I thank you so much for having me on this early. I hope make sure you let them know how early Sunday morning you got my ass up to do this. All right, that's why I look like I'm half asleep.
5:30 a.m. we started my time, 6:30 a.m. your
Yes,
time.
sir. Yes,
But
sir.
I'm up at 4 a.m. every morning, so this is my prime time. Uh, but yeah, you were able to. Thank you for coming on here and fitting me in before I had to go to the in-laws later today. And
Yeah, I thank you for having me on it, man. I feel like I don't belong. I feel like I'm just, but that's okay, man. Hopefully somebody hears something, some like, I remember that dude, or I remember that person, or I remember that day, or oh man, yeah.
these are my favorite episodes, the ones just that people might overlook, but you've seen it all. You knew all these guys, and they need their flowers. They need to
Yeah.
get their flowers, and unfortunately, like Jay Prodigy and so many other, Roland, they're not here to get them
Or
in
even J.C.
person.
Bailey. I mean, we could go on and on for a lot of them. Chip Fairway. I mean, all the ones that have passed away. Lots of people never got to see him, and that's okay. Or they saw a videotape of him and think, oh man, that guy's so good. I feel like going, man, there's so many people. Y'all have no idea.
Right. So much talent. But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for joining me this morning. You got anything to hype? Or you
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
any commentaries coming up? You got
Absolutely
anything
fucking not. No. I'm hoping that if I do commentary again, I'll be like, okay, this is the last time I'm doing commentary, guys. I did it for so long. It's just and I podcasted. We had the Back Row Heckers podcast ran from 2014, over 150 episodes, and I mean, we had Joe Gacy who just got fired from the Wyatt Six, but I mean, we had all those Eddie Kingston, who is awesome by the way. Jeez, we talked about comic books more on the podcast, me and him, than we did about wrestling, and because I got to talk to him at one of the TPIs, I had my little mic with me, and I just played that on the podcast. But I appreciate you having me on here, man. I do like listening to you. I listen to it more and I will get the chance to watch it because I'll just play it in the car, while it's
right.
on. But I like listening to it, and especially like you need to bring back some more of them AMAs here after about another 6 months when you've done a few more new shows and everything. Bring Chip and Balls back and have them talk about
Yeah.
back then compared to what you think about now. That's what some of us probably like to hear.
Okay. Well, we'll see. A lot the episodes I did with Connor and with Prophet of Ash after I did the comeback, those are probably the lowest viewed ones on YouTube right now. So I don't know if it's the fact that people don't care about the new stuff, they just want to hear about the old stuff, or if it's just timing or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's something to think about. And
Well, I'm going for the all new low. I want to. If I say I'm going for the all new low. I want Connor and all them dudes to smoke my ass. So be all
okay,
right. I,
all righty.
I, I don't think there's gonna be that many people going. Who the hell is this guy?
Well, like I said, there's been several guests that I had on at the very beginning like that, where just get on here with
Yeah,
my friends and talk about our memories of going to the
that's what you're
shows. And
supposed to do, man. That's what
so
makes it
some of
fun.
those were my favorite episodes, and they had some of my favorite stories on there. And
Ah,
people should really go back and listen to those, watch those. Just because you may not be familiar with who the guest is, there's a reason I have them on. There's a reason I
yeah,
had you on, so you could talk about these guys and share your stories. So thank you for joining me.
no problem.
Um,
Thank you for having me, man.
maybe I'll hope you come out to Pawcade when I'm down there at the end of June, and maybe you can hop onto commentary at that one and do a match and have that be your final commentary gig while I'm
I
down
kind of
there
had that
doing my
idea,
thing.
but Chad French put a nix to that one. So
Okay. All right. Well,
no, well he
then
already
I didn't
has.
mention anything then.
No, 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 no. He already has a bunch of people lined up for commentary and
Okay.
stuff, and he knows if he just threw me in there for a match, it wouldn't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's some other people that are coming up that's haven't been doing. Only done like 5 or 6 shots of commentary. I'd
Okay.
much rather them get a shot at something like Paul Cage.
Okay. Well, hopefully I see you there.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to make
And
it there and everything for sure.
all right.
Bring Hunter with me, but yeah, thank you for having me on. You have a good Sunday. Go enjoy the in-laws.
All righty, man. Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye. And this wraps up another edition of Fannin's Flashbacks. I'd like to thank Brian for joining me today. Remember to check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/sportsfannin for IWA clips and matches and these podcasts. When you get to the YouTube channel, start by hitting subscribe and then look around and like some videos. But more importantly, if you have a subscription to IWTV, Independent Wrestling Television, ran by Smart Mark Video, please go watch the podcast there. Let them know that they made the right choice by giving me the opportunity to put the podcast on there with added clips of matches and promos that we talk about on these episodes. Episode 24 guest Prophet of Ash puts a ton of time into editing these shows now to find the proper footage to add to the viewing experience. So make sure you tweet him. Again, that's Prophet of Ash on Twitter, and tell him thank you if you're enjoying the added footage. Tweet IWTV and Smart Mark Video and tell them thank you for adding Fannin's Flashbacks to their lineup. And if you aren't subscribed to IWTV yet, please do so. It's cheaper than Netflix. The wrestling's a hell of a lot better on IWTV. The best indies in the world are on IWTV, and you can watch a ton of old IWA, current products, get your video on demand feature, watch these podcasts. But go and follow me on Twitter and Instagram at jfannin73. My next show on the comeback tour is Wrestle Arts on May 23rd. You can still get your tickets at Wrestle Arts Tix, that's Tix, WrestleArtsTix.com. Connor Hopkins and I are definitely accepting bookings before then. Connor's schedule is much busier than mine, but there are still dates that can be filled for both of us. And reach out to either Connor or me on the socials and tell us you want to bring the Fannin family into your next show, and we'll see if the schedule allows for it. And we're going to see you next time on the next episode of Fannin's Flashbacks. So let it be written, so let it be done. Good day.